Hello and welcome to the audiobook for my latest memoir, You Get Back Up, How I Healed from Rock Bottom. Think about this less as like a professional Audible audiobook where it's just seamless all the way through, and more as like your classmate reading in a classroom. So there will be mistakes. I might start and stop sentences. You get the point. The book is You Get Back Up, How I Healed from Rock Bottom, and it is available on Amazon. Then the opening quote that I chose for this book is, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society," by Jiddu Krishnamurti. The reason that I chose that is because for the longest time, I have felt sort of like out of place in society. And when I read that, it really helped me understand why, because I am trying to adapt to a different kind of life than the one that is most widely accepted in today's society, at least Western society, which I believe to be profoundly sick. Note to readers, the book you're about to be read was born out of a painful year-long relationship I was in from 2018 to 2019, and the healing work I started afterward. During this time in my life, I felt lost, alone, and ashamed. I was caught in a cycle of toxic behaviors that I didn't know how to stop. I hit some of the lowest lows I ever have and became the villain of someone else's story. If you've ever been there, or if you're there now, I wrote this book for you. The only goal I wish to accomplish with it is to remind you that you're not alone. This work is a memoir. Certain names have been changed. Dialogue and events have been recreated from memory, and blah, blah, blah. Enjoy. Book 1, Rock Bottom. Chapter 1, The Inception of My Agony. My earliest memory of fear happened when Mom dropped me off at my first day of elementary school. We held hands as we entered the school grounds. When we arrived at the classroom, she tried to let go of me and said, "I have to go now, kiddo." I shook my head and said, "No, I don't want to." "You have to," she said. "I'm late for work." A strange lady, my new teacher, greeted me and helped to pry me off. Mom started to walk away. I managed to get free from the strange lady and ran toward her. "Don't leave," I begged. "Please don't leave me." My memory fades there and returns as I enter the classroom in a full weep and stand against the wall. My new classmates stare at me. I don't know why I thought this, other than that I didn't know what else to think, but I was certain that Mom wasn't going to come back for me, and that I would never see my family again. I believed I had been abandoned. To the adults in that memory, this registered as nothing more than a tantrum I would soon get over. To the little boy who watched his mother leave him in tears somewhere he didn't want to be because she was late for work, this became a traumatic life event that would shape his romantic relationships for decades to come. The feeling was reinforced many times thereafter, like the time I threw a tantrum in the magazine aisle of a department store and was abandoned again by my insecure mother, who told me she wasn't kidding when she said she would drive home without me if I didn't stop crying. Or the time I shredded my knees in second grade when Mom dragged me through the gravel parking lot in front of my friends and their parents, all because I didn't want to leave yet. It happened again a few years later, only this time it wasn't with Mom. I was 10 years old and I thought I was in love. The girl I was in love with was in love with me too. We'd been together for 1 whole year. Most of our communication happened online or through letters we wrote each other because I was afraid to approach her in real life. In the summer after 4th grade, she broke up with me. I didn't tell my parents about the relationship or the breakup. I was ashamed to have a girlfriend and ashamed that she had left me. When it happened, I isolated myself and acted like a victim as much as I could. I painted fake wounds on my body so that when I got to school, she, or anyone really, would ask what had happened to me. That way, I could get the attention I wasn't getting at home, and the consolation I pretended not to want, but was in desperate need of. My fake wounds were always because of a fall, I fell from the stairs. I fell on some rocks. I fell from my bike. The truth was that I had fallen in love. At 10 going on 11, I thought for the first time that there was no point to life without love. At home, I started to lock my bedroom door. When someone knocked, I ignored them and pretended I was asleep. I hid because I felt so alone in my pain that I wanted to disappear from the earth. Chapter 2, Falling Again. 3 weeks ago, I camped at the bottom of the Grand Canyon with my friends Penny and Evan. Since then, Penny and I stopped talking. Maddie and I ended our fling in a shouting match, and I put enough time between me and Nat to know that this time we won't be getting back together. I finally have a clean slate to start working on myself, but I don't. Instead, I start writing my first Spanish novel and fill the rest of my time with first dates and hour-long sessions of getting my ass eaten out by a muscular man that pays me $100 each time. I don't need his money. I need his validation. Then I meet Mia, who works in advertising. She's overweight but does CrossFit twice a week, so I tell myself that'll change. I would never date an overweight woman, not seriously at least. Mia and I have sex on our second date after watching a boring movie about an Indian boy who lost his parents. I try to get her off but fail. Mia and I hold hands on our third date. A month into the relationship, we stop acting like this is going somewhere. And that's when I meet Kiki. We meet for drinks on a Saturday night. I feel more nervous than usual and switch tables 3 times before she arrives. At first, I can't tell if I'm attracted to her or not. She looks heavier and manlier in person. She wears a black tank top, and I can tell from the shine on her forehead that she was in a rush to get here. Though we agreed to get drinks here, at no point in our 6-hour conversation does it bother us that all we've been drinking is water. I learned that Kiki is from the Netherlands and that her work is confidential. All she can tell me about it is that she manages people's reputations. Sometime after midnight, Kiki tells me she has to leave. It's so late, she says. I can't believe we've been here for that long. If it's too late for you to drive home, you're welcome to spend the night. I'm not far. She puts her index finger on her chin and considers it. But she knows 6-hour dates aren't easy to come by, and is smart enough not to throw that away for a one-night stand. You're so sweet, but I drove my roommate's car, so I should go home. Can I give you a ride? After she drops me off, I lie in bed and try to process what just happened. It's hard for me not to spiral. This feels like the start of something real, but it's too early for me to think that, isn't it? In the morning, when my brother asks how the date went, I tell him that Kiki is smarter than me, and unlike any other woman I've met. Each subsequent date is better than the last. For our second date, we go back to the same bar to watch stand-up comedy. I put my hand on her knee, and she puts her hand over mine. Our fingers interlock for the first time. I give her a copy of my first book, and she emails me a couple of her short stories. Then we walk back to my apartment, and she calls a ride from there. Before it arrives, I kiss her. She doesn't look manly or heavy to me anymore. Kiki looks European, and I'm just not used to that. The next time I see her, we go hiking and talk about how our parents met. She knows very detailed information about hers because she's in possession of her dad's journal from that time. Does he know that you have it? She blushes and rationalizes why it's okay that he doesn't. Mine were great people, I say, just not great parents. By the time I was born, my dad had cheated on my mom many times already. I stopped to gauge her reaction. Can she tell that he passed the trait down to me? I still talk to both of them, but I wouldn't say I have a good relationship with either of them. When I look at her again, I notice she's furrowed her brows. What? I ask. She snaps out of it. Huh? You looked really intense. Oh, my eyebrows, she says. I get that a lot. It's just a Cohen thing. I laugh and ask what a Cohen thing is. Just one of those things everyone in my family does. We look very intense when we think. It doesn't matter if what we're thinking about is serious or not. Well, it was definitely serious that time. Your family sounds so healthy compared to mine. I guess. But everyone has their moments. Martha had a phase where she was very critical of my physical appearance. That's definitely where some of my issues come from. How old were you when that happened? In my early teens. And how did it stop? Well, it's all thanks to Jonathan. Why do you keep saying Jonathan and Martha? Oh yeah, I call my parents by their first names. People think I'm weird for doing that. No shit, I laugh. Do you do it when they're around or just when you're talking about them? All the time. I feel weird calling them mom and dad. They don't call me daughter. That's actually a really great point. But I interrupted you. I'm sorry. Please continue. Oh, well, just that Jonathan was the one that told her, like, you're gonna fuck up your daughter if you don't stop. So after a while, she did. But even during that phase, what I remember more is that she was always emotionally available regardless of whether or not we were fighting. Unconditional love, I said. I'm sorry it wasn't like that for you. It's alright. It's made life harder in some ways, and easier in others. How has it made life easier? I guess that because I never felt supported by them, not having their support now doesn't really bother me. She furrows her brows again, and I can't help but laugh. Ugh, she says, I did it again, didn't I? I think it's cute. Chapter 3. Moving. Oh, okay, so and another thing is that the book bounces between past and present, right? So it's sort of following two similar stories, one from my childhood and one from the last 6 years of my life, I guess. All right, Chapter 3, Moving. It's the start of 5th grade, and Martina is a thing of the past. I have a new girlfriend to help me cope with the loneliness I feel. Our family is driving home from school or eating lunch or ending the Sunday tradition of arguing about money when Mom and Dad decide to break the news to us. We're moving to California next year. I find it odd that Dad is here for this. He hasn't lived in our house for quite some time. All of us, I ask? Just you, me, and Todd. Todd and I look at each other. This isn't the first time they've had this conversation. What about Juliana? She wants to finish her senior year of high school with her friends. Well, I want to finish my senior year of elementary with mine too. Dad says, you don't want your mom moving to a new country alone, do you? I look at Todd for answers because he's my older brother, and he always has them. He looks confused and upset, but he doesn't say anything. He sighs. This isn't fair, I say. I run upstairs and lock myself in my bedroom as the tears come. I cry into my knees and forearms in the fetal position, expecting to hear Mom or Dad's voice outside my bedroom, but their voices never come. Shortly after that, our entire community finds out that we are leaving. Things are gradually sold at garage sales we host in our home. One of my mother's best friends knows someone that wants her piano. I will never hear Mom pour her soul into it again. Friends of friends barter with me for old DVDs and video games. The clothes that don't fit me, I just give away. My new girlfriend, Bailey, and I agree that when I leave, we will end things but still chat online. I resent Mom for everything that's happening. As my life is progressively turned upside down against my will, our house gets broken into on several occasions. One morning, Todd finds a young boy in the linen room, sent here by his parents to steal from us. Todd says the boy looks scared, so he just asked him to leave. Mom and Dad make fun of Todd for letting him go. Mom says, "How could you just let him walk out? He stole from us." To which Todd says, "What was I supposed to do? He's a little boy." And from that day on, Todd will cement in his head that Mom and Dad are not to be trusted. Before the end of the year, my cat, Tiger, gives birth to a dozen kittens in my sock drawer. Mom and Dad think it's cute, but then break the news to me that not only will the kittens not be coming to California, neither will Tiger. I ask Mom why, and she says, pets can't travel on airplanes. I don't believe her. She lies about the ashes in her toilet, so I'm sure she lies about other stuff too. And yet, there's nothing I can do about it. More and more, it feels like the move is something we're doing for Mom and not for the family. Strangers begin showing up to our home to take Tiger's kittens. She's holed up in the linen room with them like she's holding hostages at a bank robbery. Dad is the SWAT team that comes barging in with the pool skimmer net to try and capture them. I don't know why I was allowed to witness such a torturous thing, but there are memories I will never forget of her kittens clinging to that net for dear life. Everything that once was will never be again. My childhood is evaporating in front of my own eyes. The future is uncertain. Even though Todd and I have been given the option to return after 1 year if we don't like it, a year is such a long time for me that I can't conceptualize what that would even look like. Return to what house if you're going to sell this one? Return to what mom if the one that gave birth to me never wants to come back? Return to what family if the one I was born into will be broken up forever? At school, I put up a facade to shield myself from the agonizing sadness. My friends ask me if I'm excited to move to Los Estados Unidos, and I say that I am because I'm afraid to show weakness. Every goodbye party I attend feels like the end of the world. At this point, I'm a couple of seasons into the high school beach drama, The O.C., and I take from it how I'm supposed to act in these scenarios, because I don't talk to mom or dad about virtually anything that worries me. When I say goodbye to my friends, I act as dramatic as I can. That is what Ryan Atwood does. And I want people to be sad when I leave, the way the rest of the characters in the OC are when he leaves. By the time we pack up and leave, I start to feel crippling anxiety and a fear of being forgotten. And because I have no outlet for these feelings, I become severely depressed. My solution is to not feel anything, because then I can't be hurt. I begin the darkest year of my childhood. Chapter 4. Anxiety. My improv comedy class starts with stretches. We go around the circle and share life updates as we do them. I hear about job stuff, travel plans, and fun nights out. When it gets to me, I say, I may have met the love of my life. I'm not lying this time like I was with Nat. Kiki is smart and funny, and so unique that I'm convinced I'll never meet anyone like her again. I feel more like myself when I'm around her. I tell all of my friends and family about it. Dad says he's happy for me, but urges me to be careful and not fall too hard. Mom asks if this means grandkids are on the way. And my good friend Donald says, I don't want to jinx you, but right when I started to think that Alana was the one, we started having problems. I internalize layers and layers of other people's projections. I also become a lot more insecure in my relationship with Kiki, because now everyone knows I have met someone. So if things don't work out, what will I do? Tell them that she left me? I meet Kiki's friends and get along with them better than I ever did with Nat's. She dominates conversation a lot more than Nat, which makes it easy for me to sit back and do what I'm best at, which is to not participate. I find myself comparing Kiki to Nat a lot because I'm so happy I've finally found someone that complements my personality. Kiki can actually have deep, meaningful conversations. She can understand what I'm saying when I explain the intricacies of my writing process. Not only that, she actually likes talking about it. And we orgasm simultaneously every time we have sex. There is nothing about her that I find unattractive. One night I find myself in bed next to her, thinking that this is what real love must feel like. The more time we spend together, the harder it is to be apart. Sunday mornings are especially hard because I tend to wake up at hers and go into work sleep-deprived and drained from all the sex. And it doesn't help that I'm overcome with anxiety every time we say goodbye. After a couple of weeks, I quit my food truck job and downsized to one job, my weekday job, that doesn't interfere with Kiki and me spending time together. Weekends become fully ours now, which opens the door for me to spend more time with her and her friends and stop seeing mine. Kiki's cousin drives up from San Antonio and invites us to go hiking at the Greenbelt. She tells me about it one morning in bed, just after we've had sex. Her curly black hair is on my chest, and her hand slides up and down my forearm. I'd love to meet your cousin, I say. I feel her smile against my skin. She looks at me and asks, "So, how should I introduce you?" I smile, and she giggles. "How do you want to introduce me?" "I don't know. I mean, we haven't really talked about it. Do you want to tell him that I'm your boyfriend? Because in my head, I've thought of you as my girlfriend for weeks now." She nods her head yes, and the blush on her cheeks brightens. She kisses me and giggles some more, and then says, "So I'm your girlfriend then?" "You are," I say. "Now come here. I want to fuck you as my girlfriend." We're in bed again, only this time we're sitting on opposite sides of it, and it's dark out. She's clutching her wrists and tight in the rest of her body. I'm numb, and I feel like a child again, waiting for permission to move or speak or show any trace of emotion. Her roommates are home, and I'm more concerned with them hearing us than I am with the fight that we're having. "Do you want me to leave?" I finally ask her. Her grip tightens as she asks, "Why would I want you to leave?" "Because I've upset you." Her eyes are closed. She's focused on her breathing. I'm so disconnected from the moment that all I can think about is how I ruined another beautiful thing. I have no sense of how to fix this or what to do other than to leave my own body, and that's not even something I do consciously. The last thing I want is to leave, but it's the only narrative that makes sense to me. "Look," she says, "I'm not concerned with that. What's important to me is that we develop healthy communication when things like this happen. Your leaving would be the farthest from healthy. So please stop asking if I want you to do that." "I'm sorry," I say, and retreat further into my shell. "You're right. I feel very anxious right now, and I need your help to calm down." I spring up, eager to help. "But only if you want to," she adds. "If you want to leave, I don't want to impose." "You're not. If you need my help, I want to do that. What do you need?" "Can you hold me?" she asks. I slide over to her side of the bed and sit behind her with my legs around hers. I wrap my arms around her and kiss the top of her head. She's so tense I feel like I'm hugging a rock at first. Then she softens. "This hasn't happened in so long." "What hasn't happened?" I ask. "This kind of physical anxiety. It's so weird." "When was the last time?" "College graduation last year," she says. "It was really bad with my ex." "I'm sorry." "It's fine. No. I'm sorry about today. I acted like a jackass while you were feeling like this." "It's okay. I mean, not like okay, but like I said, as long as we can communicate when these things come up, that's what matters to me." "You're right. I hope your friends don't think I'm an asshole now." "They understand. I'll talk to Teddy tomorrow." Whatever it was that prompted me to act the way I did today vanishes from my mind. I have made amends with Kiki, and for now, at least, I don't feel scared about her leaving me anymore. That's what I was after, anyway. I need to avoid being alone at all costs, because no one will ever be as loving and understanding with me as Kiki just was. I sit behind her in one of the most loving embraces of my life. There is so much empathy in this woman that it emanates from her body. I can feel it moving from hers into mine. She accepts me fully, and as long as that's the case, what does it matter what I feel? Chapter 5. My American Dream. Our house in the Bay Area is tiny compared to the one we had in Cancun, yet it feels big to me, mostly because I'm alone in it every day for an hour, before and after school. Mom teaches at Todd's high school, and the two of them leave before the bus comes to pick me up at 8. They arrive an hour after the bus drops me off, so the house is all mine in those 2 hours. I've made some friends at my public school, but I feel crippling anxiety when I'm there because I've never attended a school with more than 300 students, let alone 3,000. Classes are a lot harder, and there's this kid we call Cookie that likes to intimidate me and my pal Michael in the locker rooms. It's also my first time being in locker rooms with naked boys. Students curse at teachers and call them names. My algebra teacher wears bifocals that make her eyes pop, and she comes from a military background. And every time she picks me to answer a question about baseball statistics, I tell her I don't know the answer and duck my head into my arms, ashamed that I'm not as smart as the rest of the kids in my gifted and talented group. Girls look at me in the hallways and on the bus. I can tell they want to talk to me, and part of me wants to talk to them, but I still don't know how to do that. I do not feel safe here. So I start tugging at the hairs on the back of my skull during class. I stop washing my uniform pants. I don't wear layers when it's cold. I skip school often and answer the principal's phone call to my home in my best fatherly voice. Yes, Nicholas is feeling sick today. Yes, I'm here with him now. I do all of this because I'm incapable of dealing with the fear and isolation that has been cast upon my life, seemingly overnight. At home, I live in front of screens. When my friends are online, I play video games with them. When it's time for all the network TV shows, I go in my brother's bedroom to watch them with him. Mom is a presence in my life, but we only spend quality time with her on the weekends. She is busy teaching full-time and going to school part-time, so I try to avoid bugging her for anything other than dinner and lunch money for school. I got a phone call from the principal today. I turn to face my mother, who sits at her desk. Did I skip school today? She says you're skipping school a lot. I've just felt sick a few times, I lie. It's not a big deal. Are you sure there's nothing else going on? You can tell me if there is. I'm sure. All right. I twirl my hair into knots and tug at the knots. I've grown used to the pinch now. It's like scratching an itch. I do it without putting much thought into it. My algebra homework stares at me as I stare at the back of Mom's head. I love her and am terrified of her at the same time. Mom, I say, already going toward her with my homework in hand. Can you help me? She stops what she's doing and sighs. I shouldn't have asked for help. What do you need help with? I set my notebook down on her desk and point to the equation I can't solve. You know math isn't my strong suit, she says. But let's see. She traces the equation with her finger and then picks up her pencil, starts jotting down signs and numbers. We're solving for x, right? I nod my head yes. She writes a few more numbers down, but can't figure out the answer. I giggle from behind her. Mom drops the pencil and slides my notebook away from her computer. She says, you know what, Nick? Fuck you. If you're going to laugh at me when I'm trying to help you, then you can do your own homework. I knew I shouldn't have asked her for help, but now I feel like I shouldn't even exist in her life. My eyes water as I turn away from her and run upstairs. I go into my bedroom and cry into my pillows with my covers over my full body. It's as close to disappearing as I can get. I miss my dad, though he feels like a figment of my imagination at this point. A character from a past life. Everything before this new American life feels like it never happened. This is my new reality, and it's a harsh one that I never imagined I would have to endure. The only person I have to talk to about it all is my ex-girlfriend, Bailey, and I never tell her how I really feel because I've put it in my head that if I do, she won't like me anymore. Todd has a girlfriend now and problems of his own to deal with. I don't want to be more of a burden to him than I already am. It's my responsibility to push through the discomfort. I hear Mom call my name from outside and then enter the room. Go away, I cry from under the covers. Listen, honey, she says as she sits next to me in bed. I'm sorry, but you can't laugh at me when I'm trying to help you. I sniffle and wipe a mixture of sweat and tears onto my pillow. Okay, Mom asks. I am more afraid of her now than I've ever been. Afraid of her instability. I'm only 12, but in this moment, I understand that she is just as much of a child as I am, if not more, and that because of that, I am alone in this world. My mother is incapable of nurturing me. She needs me to be the adult that she can't. Our relationship will never be the same again. Okay, I say. I'm sorry. I'll be downstairs if you need me. Okay. I hear the door close. I make the decision that I'm going back to Mexico next year, no matter what. Moments later, I hear the door open again. It's Todd. Are you all right? I take a deep breath and compose myself enough to believably tell him that I am. Okay, he says. I'll be in my room watching a movie. Wait, I say. I come out from underneath the covers. Can I come watch it with you? I'm already like a half hour into it. I don't mind, but only if it's okay with you. I don't care. I'm going downstairs to get some popcorn. Okay, I'll meet you in your room. He leaves the door open as he turns to go downstairs. My chest and my arms vibrate and cause my breathing to be shaky. I'm cold and I don't feel very good, but I'll never pass up the opportunity to spend time with Todd. When we're not fighting, he's the one person that actually seems to enjoy my company. Chapter 6. Emotional Wreck. I meet Kiki's mom, Marfa, around the time that Todd gets broken up with by his first real love. Leaving him alone feels like an act of treason, but other than the occasional conversation about life and love, he finds his peace in the movies and video games that he consumes. Kiki and Marfa pick me up, and together we drive to a Mexican restaurant in Austin's east side. So, Nick, Marfa says, where's the smoothie place that you work at? I can tell from her voice that Martha's a smoker. She also has a strong Dutch accent. I find that both put together make hers one of the most unique voices I've ever heard. It's actually just one block down from where we're eating dinner on 6th Street, I say. Used to be you could get stabbed in these parts. Austin's changed a lot, she says. Not too long ago, you could get stabbed in my neighborhood too, I say. We park on a dark street next to a cluster of scooters. Then we get out and walk 2 blocks to the restaurant. Marfa holds Kiki's hand, and Kiki holds mine. And Kiki finds it funny that we walk like this. I think it's amazing she's close enough with her mom to do something like this. Whatever nervousness I expected there to be tonight isn't there. Marfa is so comfortable in her own skin that one can't help but feel the same way around her. When we arrive, we drink beers in the patio while we wait for our table. Did you pay for these? Marfa asks. I nod yes. Kiki? Me? What did I do? I'm happy to, Marfa, really. I can't tell if it genuinely upset Marfa that I paid for them or not. She pulls out her pouch of tobacco and rolls another cigarette. Kiki seems bothered every time she does this. Where did you learn to roll your own cigarettes, I ask. It's what everyone does in Europe. It's half the fun. Marfa disarms me with her laugh. By the time we're seated, I feel like she's my mom, too. During dinner, the topic of someone's last will and testament comes up, a friend of their family. My dad hasn't written his will either, I say. Why not? Marfa asks. I'm not sure. As much as my mom wants me to, I haven't asked him. I think it's more important to focus on our relationship than it is to fight about how much money I'll get when he dies. Kiki holds my hand and says, okay, but is it possible to do both? Not fight about it, talk about it. Isn't it his responsibility to write it, though? I don't see how that's my job. Tears start to well up inside of me, so I pause. I'm sorry, I say. It's just hard for me to talk about my dad. Don't be sorry, Martha says. Yeah, Kiki adds, it's okay. I guess the way I see it is that if and when he does die, I don't want to look back and think about how all I did was nag him about my inheritance. I see what that's done to his relationship with my mom and my sister. Kiki hands me a napkin with her free hand and squeezes my hand with the other one. I wipe the tears from my eyes. The inheritance is his legacy to leave, not mine to police him on. What does your mom think about that? Kiki asks. She says, you say that now, but when everyone starts fighting you for $1 million, we'll see how you feel. I roll up the wet napkin and unconsciously tear at it as I continue. It's almost like she wants to be proven right. Yeah, that's pretty harsh. Anyway, I say, great first impression, huh, Martha? Kiki and I laugh, and Martha reminds me it's okay to get emotional. She grabs my hand and says, family issues are hard for everyone. Then she shares a similar experience she went through. After she does, I excuse myself from the table to go splash cold water on my face and wipe away the dried tears. There is a voice in my head that tells me I've ruined my relationship with Kiki, and that after tonight, I'll be alone again. Nobody wants their daughter to date an emotional wreck. And that's what the voice tells me I am for crying tonight. An emotional wreck. There's another voice that says crying in front of my girlfriend's mother is a sign of strength. But that voice isn't mine. It's Kiki's and Martha's. I'm the one that rejects this part of me, not them. This is the first of many times that Kiki and her family will show me the unconditional love I didn't get as a little boy and can't give myself as an adult. Chapter 7. Thanks, bud. The only positive about being so far from home was that the shouting matches stopped. I no longer had to hide in my bedroom as Mom cursed out Juliana for borrowing her clothes without permission. Gone were the days of Dad's Sunday service on how broke our family was, despite all of the evidence to the contrary. Now, I only heard about our finances twice a month. Once from my phone call with Dad, and once from Mom after the call. Did your dad say when he was going to send all the money he owes me? He didn't. Mom also liked to remind Todd and me that the only reason our dad wasn't in prison was because she didn't want us to grow up without a father. I didn't like it when she talked about him that way. I didn't want to believe that my dad was a bad person, and hearing Mom say that he was angered me. I started to feel like she was the bad one. Even when Dad did send her money, she said it wasn't even a fraction of what she was owed. Nothing was ever enough for her. You know we built that business together, right? That's what paid for the house he just sold for millions of dollars and the one he's building with that money. When Dad gave Mom 10 grand in cash, she said, "What am I going to do with this? Hide it under my bed? I can't deposit that much money into my bank account." Because I didn't know how to process any of this, I looked to Todd. He always dismissed it and said it was just the way that our parents were. I tried to dismiss my feelings too, but never quite could. I was always angry or sad or numb or lonely. I worried about money, but spent as much of it as I could. Consumerism was the only way out of my emotions at the time, and Mom was great about that. I had all the latest video games, and I watched all the newest movies. I ate Subway sandwiches for lunch and round table pizza for dinner. I continued to navigate my new life and failures completely alone. I'd been making eyes with a tall girl from school named Jaina. I was afraid to talk to her in person, so instead I asked her to be my girlfriend via Facebook Messenger. When she said yes, I told my good friend Declan about it. He was just as surprised as I was that she had said yes. A week later I found out we were surprised for the same reason. Jaina broke up with me after 1 week and started dating Declan. Declan stopped being my friend, but before he did, he said, "Jaina was just using you to get to me." "Thanks, bud." Declan did talk to Jaina in person, and held her hand and kissed her. He did everything I was too afraid to do, and I punished myself for not being as brave as him. Everyone found out that Jaina had left me for Declan, and my only close group of friends saw it as a betrayal. And only my close group of friends saw it as a betrayal, so everyone else didn't. The rest of our middle school saw it as the defeat that I still felt it was. From that point on, I put my head down when I walked through the hallways. I became quieter in my friend group. I filled the role that I thought I was supposed to fill. Toward the end of the year, I lucked my way into another relationship. Her name was Sadie. She was the new girl back home. I only knew she existed because Bailey became good friends with her, and she only knew who I was because all of my friends still talked about me. I fell in love with her when I first heard her South African accent on a Skype video call. After a month of chatting with her, when Todd and I decided we wanted to go back to Cancun, I asked her to be my girlfriend. All of a sudden, life was great. 3 weeks before I started 7th grade, Sadie stood me up for our first ever in-person date and broke up with me via text message. The following day, she announced on her Facebook page that she was in a relationship with someone else from our school, and everything shattered into pieces again. Boom. Chapter 8. Happy Hour. With Kiki, I entered every social situation the same way I entered 7th grade, riddled with feelings of inferiority. When I first met her two best friends, Liam and Teddy, we got along, but every time after that always ended in a fight. She invited me and Teddy to a company happy hour. Teddy mingled like it was natural to him. I orbited around Teddy or Kiki or the new hire, Elia, who I could tell was introverted. When I wasn't talking to them, I stared at my phone. I shut down and went into the safe hiding place that is my inner monologue. I labeled everyone around me as something I was better than. I bet the CEO wants to fuck Kiki. Look at Teddy, acting like he's better than me. Teddy worked an office job that also hosted monthly happy hours. This was my first time at a company happy hour, and it was with people I didn't know. He wasn't better than me, he was just more experienced. But that wasn't how I saw it then. Back then I felt that Teddy was challenging my position as Kiki's boyfriend, even though he was gay. Why are you on your phone? I looked up and found Kiki at my side, martini in hand. She put her hand on my shoulder. Are you not enjoying yourself? In the past I would have lied and told my partner that everything was fine. I considered lying again, but I had yet to give up on our relationship. Instead, I told a half-truth. I'm just nervous, I said. Don't worry about me. Nervous about what? Everyone thinks that you two are fighting right now. They all think it's your fault that you're fighting. Everyone thinks you're an asshole. I don't want to talk about this right now. I'll put my phone away. Will you come and sit with me? I'll do all of the talking so you don't have to be nervous. Of course, I said. I followed her to the long table everyone was seated at. We squeezed in. Gazes landed on me. I made up stories in my head about why. I retreated further into my shell and held on to Kiki's hand for dear life. Every now and then she turned back to see if I was still engaged. Every time she did, I noticed an increasingly worried look on her face. After the happy hour, we drove back to her place in silence. When we arrived, she left the engine running and closed her eyes. I went for the car door, but felt her hand fall on my knee. What's wrong? She asked. I put my hand over hers and said, What do you mean? Something's wrong. You were on your phone at the happy hour and now we're not talking. We're talking right now, honey, and I told you I was on my phone. What do you mean? So you're not mad at me? Mad at you for what? I don't know. You were on your phone. Why aren't we talking? You didn't say a word to me the entire drive back. How do you feel right now? What? Why aren't you answering my question? I just want to check in and see how you're feeling. You feel tense and your eyes are closed. I feel very anxious. Okay. I didn't say a word on the drive back because these social settings take a lot out of me. It's not because I'm mad at you. If anything, I'm grateful for how you responded." "Really?" "Yes, I can get very in my head when I'm around a lot of people, especially your coworkers, because I want them to like me. But I'm not mad at you, and I'm sorry that I was on my phone." She opens her eyes and says, "It's all right. You were nervous." Chapter 9, Beautiful Boy. Uprooting my life to move to another country was traumatic for me, and it happened twice. Things were different when I returned to Mexico. I no longer had the presence of a mother. My dad was busy running his company and dating his girlfriend. At school, my friends were excited that I was back for about one day. Before the start of the new school year, Dad looked at the long hair I'd been growing out for a year and said to me, "We need to cut that, or else people will think you're my daughter." Prior to him saying that, I'd never thought that I looked like a girl. Now, not only did I think it, I felt ashamed of it and the rest of my more feminine qualities, like how sensitive I was. After my haircut, I became bitter toward Dad. I showed it by avoiding him, which was easy considering he wasn't home most of the day. Work was his life before we moved to California. Work was his life while we were in California. And work was damn sure going to remain his life now that we'd moved back. There was a phone call I had with him when I told him I wanted to move back that sums it up neatly. He asked why I wanted to move back, and I told him that I missed him and my friends. "Well, you've got your home here, you know that. But really think about it. Your mom's not going to be around to take care of you." It became a priority of mine to require from Dad as little as humanly possible. He was busy, and that's how life was for a man who wanted to take care of his family. I just had to accept the fact and become hardened like him. That year, Dad stopped kissing Todd and me on the cheek when he dropped us off at school. He had his driver pick us up after school. On my way up to the apartment we lived in, the one directly above his office, I often stopped to say hi or ask his secretary if he was around. When he was around, I always felt like I was getting in the way of him and his work. He was on the move or talking to 3 people at once or editing pictures on his computer. But when he wasn't, Maggie gave me money to walk to the corner store and buy potato chips and candy bars, and then Dad being absent wasn't such a bad thing. This began my habit of binge eating to numb myself from pain. And what better opportunity to do that than Sadie having left me for an older and more popular boy? It reinforced my belief that I wasn't good enough for anyone. I only told my good friend Roland from San Jose Middle School about her. He'd wished me luck on my return to paradise, as he called it. "You're going back to paradise and a beautiful girlfriend. Everyone at San Jose wishes they were you right now." I lied to him when Sadie left me. I told him we were together and doing well. I made up different scenarios about how I defended Sadie. The made-up story I remember the most details from was one where Sadie and I were at the beach with another couple we knew. We were drinking beers because that's what 13-year-olds did, when out of nowhere, the kid that Sadie was actually dating in real life came up to us and kicked sand in our faces. "Then what happened?" Roland asked. "My friend and I beat their asses. It was amazing, dude. You should have been there. You would love it down here." I wrote from the empty penthouse apartment I was currently alone in on a Saturday night. Candy bar wrappers and empty soda cans strewn about my feet. I guess my talent for telling stories had to start somewhere. Less than a month into the semester, I had become a shell of myself. I was a liar, an addict, a gambler, a bully, and a cheater. I took the easy way out of every problem I encountered because I was 13 and left to figure out the world on my own. I didn't know any better. But I wasn't always like this. I wasn't born this way. There was a time before the pain had seeped into the core of my being, when I was still innocent, when I believed I could be happy. People picked me up and carried me in their arms and told me I was a beautiful boy. My older sister's friends kissed my chubby cheeks and let me ride on their shoulders like I was special. I was loved simply because I existed. Chapter 10, Marfa. After arguing with Kiki that I don't believe her friends want me to come, I agree to travel to Marfa with them for the weekend. Teddy and the girls take one car, and Kiki, Liam, and I take the other. Everyone is at least 1 year older than me, and I feel inferior because of this. In the car with Liam and Kiki, I manage the feeling well. They're such close friends that it's hard to get a word in. They banter back and forth, and I only speak when spoken to. Part of me blames Kiki for this. It's her fault that I'm quiet. She should stop talking so much and let me talk every now and then. She would if she cared about me. I sit with these thoughts for the 6-hour drive. Thoughts that pit me against the one person on this trip I feel safe around. When we arrive, I look like I don't want to be here because when it comes out that no one wanted me to come in the first place, I want to be able to say, good, I didn't want to come either. The self-loathing is intolerable, and it bleeds into my interactions with everyone. I judge everything and everyone because I'm afraid to judge myself. We eat pasta and drink wine and call it a night early. The next day we go to Chinati Foundation, Marfa's biggest museum, and after 1 hour, Liam rushes us to the next activity. Liam walks at a slow jog pace, and everyone but me matches his speed. I walk like I'm on a meditation retreat. Kiki notices I've fallen behind and waits for me. Why are you slowing down? She asks. I am not slowing down, I say. This is the pace I want to walk at. But everyone is so far ahead of us. Then go be with them. I don't get why we're rushing, I say. Kiki's smile turns to a frown. I thought you liked to go on walks and look at the birds and slow down. Her gaze turns downward. I know that I've hurt her, but I've repressed my feelings for so long now that I resent the fact that she can't do the same with hers. This is her fault, not mine. I do, she says, but I want to be with my friends. It's different than if it was just the two of us. Go be with them, I say. I'll get there like 5 minutes after you guys. It's not a big deal. That's not what I'm saying. Then what's the problem? I ask. I feel like my behavior is being put under a microscope. I want you to be with me when I'm with my friends. Is that too much to ask for? I don't know how to tell her it isn't, that I'm just afraid of being rejected. I don't know how because it's not even a thought that enters my mind. I'm convinced that it's everyone else's fault. I'm just worried that this trip would have been more fun for everyone if I hadn't come. You guys are walking so slow, Teddy says from up ahead. Liam adds, yeah, hurry up, lovebirds. See, Kiki says, they want us to be with them. And even if they didn't, what should matter to you is that I want you to be with us. You're right, I say. It's hard for me to be as involved as you are, but I can be with you. Nobody's paying attention to how involved you are, honey. My friends like you. They've told me so, and they wouldn't do that if they didn't mean it. But the problem isn't whether or not anyone else likes me. The problem is, I don't like myself. Night falls as we drink beers at an outdoor bar. Though we're all together, we've split into smaller groups. Kiki and I get more playful with each other the more we drink. It isn't until we kiss that we remember we're not alone, and probably shouldn't make love on this dirt patio. From there, we go to another bar where the people are dancing. I've had enough to drink that I've stopped fighting myself. I smile at people and laugh as I dance with them. I take Kiki in my arms and kiss her and think this isn't all that different from my high school days, drunk and dancing at nightclubs. Only this time I'm actually enjoying myself. I didn't know you liked to dance, Kiki says. I didn't know 4 Shiner Box would get me drunk, I say. It's fun dancing with you. Kiki blushes and does this thing with her eyes that I'll never be able to describe, but that is one of the reasons I fell in love with her. It's so fun dancing with you, she says. The night goes on like this for a while before Kiki and I decide to go back to the Airbnb. It's close to midnight, but the desert stars shine so bright it feels like it's earlier. Kiki says, I can't believe we've only been dating for a few months. It's felt so much longer. Yeah, it has. It's hard to think of life before you. It's like it all starts the night of our first date. Do you still remember what we talked about? Not everything, but I remember a lot, like your brows being furrowed for the entire date. Oh God, was it bad? It was cute. What do you remember about that night? I remember I was intimidated when I first saw you. You were so tall and handsome. If I'm being honest though, I was worried you wouldn't be that interesting to talk to. What? I laugh. So you thought I was a meathead? I just thought maybe you were one of those really attractive guys that aren't all that interesting. That's funny. I also remember going home that night and thinking it was so cool how engaged in the conversation we both were that we never even got drinks. Yeah, we were there for like 6 hours, weren't we? We were. Do you want to know the craziest part about all of this? What? I ask. I almost missed our match on Bumble. I was about to delete the app when I saw it. My jaw drops. For a moment, I contemplate what not meeting Kiki would have been like. If you hadn't extended the match, I don't think we ever would have met, she adds. At least now we have a more interesting story for how we met than just through a dating app. That's true. Ugh, this has been so fun, Kiki says. I'm so happy that you came on this trip. Me too, I say, the beer's starting to wear off. We should come back, just us sometime. I would love that. You know, I say, I've been going back and forth in my head about something. About what? I've been thinking about how I feel about you. Telling myself to wait for a better time. Maybe one when we haven't been fighting. But I realized just now that's bullshit. That would mean it was conditional. I wipe sweat off of my forehead and stop walking. I love you, Kiki Cohen. I can tell Kiki's never been happier to hear those words. She puts her index finger over her lips like she's in deep thought and says, Can you say it again? I put my arms around her and kiss her. Then I say it again. I love you, Kiki Cohen. Chapter 11. Different. Mom used to tell my siblings and me that we were different. By the time I was 8, Todd, Juliana, and I would often say to each other that nobody gets it the way we do. Simply put, we thought we were better than others. It would be years before I started to question this. Back then it made me feel special, but isolated. I was convinced that we were different, and because of that, I had a harder time connecting with others. If nobody was going to get it, why try? The first thing that reaffirmed my belief that I was different was the car accident my brother, our friend Axel, and I were involved in. Axel had been asleep in the back seat, my brother at the wheel, and me in the passenger seat, the only one without his seatbelt on. My body was hurled against the windshield as we crashed into a palm tree. The doctors said it was a miracle that I survived with only a hip fracture. I lost a few teeth and suffered massive trauma to the gums that, decades later, I have yet to fully recover from. I wore crutches for 2 months and sat to shower. While in the hospital and in the years spent at the dentist afterward, I was praised for suffering in silence. I didn't care about my injuries because of the attention they got me. Girls I had masturbated to all of a sudden wanted to sit with me during school lunch breaks. Older kids I looked up to helped me carry books up the stairs. Mom flew down from the Bay just to see me. What I did care about was the lie I was fed about how the accident happened. My memory of it is intact to this day, up until the moment we smashed into a palm tree. The clearest image of the accident that I have is of Todd's friend, Mallory, in the lane next to us, juking toward us with the steering wheel as a joke, and my brother losing control of the car because of his reaction to this. I was told by all of the adults that the accident did not happen that way, and to never tell anyone that again. They said it was an accident and that I should have been wearing my seatbelt. I did what I was told, but I ignored Mallory any time I saw her in school or any time she came to visit me in the hospital. I felt like this terrible accident that could have ended my life was her fault, and she was pretending like it wasn't. I hated her for lying, and I hated myself for upholding her lies. Yet again, I was the different one. I was the one who knew the truth and wanted to tell it. I was the only one who suffered real damage. I was the only one who didn't wear a seatbelt. I found solace in the girls that were suddenly interested in me, most of them 8th graders. Eloisa was the older sister of one of my classmates, Clarissa. I wanted to date both the freckled sisters, but before the accident, I was a ghost to Eloisa. Our relationship began when she helped me carry my books to class one day. We exchanged phone numbers and started texting after school and poking each other on Facebook. Before I knew it, we were practically dating. We ate lunch together every day. We found each other in the hallways between classes to laugh or gossip about something. And we told one another about everything that was going on in our lives and even held hands when we were alone. My sexual shame ran so deep that I couldn't fathom the idea of anyone seeing us touch each other. I thought everyone would laugh at the way I was holding her hand or touching her. That was for brave men to do, not weak boys like me. Eloisa invited me to sit with her at the 8th graders' table during lunch on the days that we didn't hide in the computer lab. I always refused because every single girl I found unattainable sat there, including my ex, Sadie, and her new boyfriend, and because I imagined everyone at the table would know that I wasn't supposed to be sitting there. There were also 9th and 10th graders that wanted to get with Eloisa, and I assumed every one of them hated me or envied me or both. I allowed them to walk all over me and figured if I didn't stand up for myself, no one could make fun of me for trying. Things fell apart when I decided to be brave. Eloisa invited me to the mall with her friends on a Friday night. Sadie was there with her boyfriend. The 9th and 10th graders that wanted to get with Eloisa were there too. As we walked along the stores, the older boys came up to Eloisa and wrapped their arms around her. She walked with them for a moment and then returned to my arms. It seemed like the less interest I showed her, the more Eloisa wanted my attention. We crossed the street away from the mall and toward a residential neighborhood where one of the girls lived. Everyone was drinking and smoking cigarettes except for me. We approached a minivan and people started to get in it. The girl that got in the driver's seat appeared to be drunk. "I think I'm going to walk," I said. "Come on," one of the older boys said. "Don't be scared. We do this all the time. It's safe." Eloisa grabbed my hand and asked why I didn't want to get in the minivan with them. "You've all been drinking. I'm scared to drive with you." "Nobody is drunk yet," Eloisa said. "Are you sure you don't want to?" "Yeah, I'm just scared because of the accident." Eloisa got out of the minivan, turned to her friends, and said, "I'll stay with him." Everyone moaned and complained. "It's okay," I said. "My dad's picking me up soon anyway. You can go with them." "Are you sure?" she asked me. "I'm sure," I said. "Okay. Good night then," Eloisa said, and then got in the minivan. I looked at my phone for the first time all night as they drove away. No missed calls or new texts. It was past 10. I called Dad, but he didn't pick up. I walked in the direction of the mall with my phone in my hand, waiting for it to vibrate. After a few minutes, it finally did. "Hello?" I said. "Are you ready for me to pick you up?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm at the mall." "I'll be there soon." When Dad arrived, I got in the passenger seat of his white pickup truck and shut the door. "Where are your friends?" he asked. "You just missed them," I said. I kept my face turned away from him as we drove home. I wanted to cry, but I didn't want Dad to see me. A couple of stray tears rolled down my cheeks, and I wiped them before they reached my chin. My phone vibrated. I had a new message from Eloisa. "I don't think we should continue whatever it was that we were doing together. I put my phone away and wiped more tears from my face. I knew I was in a car with Dad and that meant I was supposed to feel safe, but I didn't feel safe. It felt like the world was going to end. I followed Dad up the stairs to our apartment. He turned the TV on and fell asleep watching it in bed. I looked for Todd in his room, but he wasn't home. I walked outside the apartment to the terrace and then up the stairs to the rooftop. From there, I could see the surrounding grocery and hardware stores all lit up and their parking lots full, even this late at night. The sound of cars honking and people playing basketball in the park helped me to drown out the sound of my pain. I finally cried as I read through my entire text history with Eloisa. I reached in my pocket for the cigarette and lighter that she had given me. I put the cigarette in my mouth and lit it. I took a drag and coughed. I hated the taste, but finished it anyway. I tossed the butt over the edge and watched it fall 3 stories and hit the ground. I wondered what would happen if I did the same with my body. Chapter 12. The Beginning of the End. Our fights always started for the same 2 reasons: my difficulty being around Kiki's friends and the crippling anxiety she carried from her last relationship into this one. When we were alone, things were mostly good. We talked about writing and went for walks. We had tons of sex. But when I felt abandoned in social settings, I got upset with her. And when I got upset with her, her anxiety resurfaced. We triggered each other and were still so blinded by our past that we weren't able to stay present. Around her friends, Kiki always dominated the conversation, and I took a back seat. When she asked why I was so quiet, I said, "It's hard to get a word in sometimes." But she heard, "You talk way too much." Then we returned to the table anxious and disconnected and continued to drift apart until we were alone again. Sometimes even then it was hard for us to hear each other. I always heard, "It's your fault that I feel anxious," or "I'm leaving you." She always heard, "You're a terrible person and I'm leaving you." And what we actually meant was, "I feel hurt and scared." A few months into the relationship, we traveled to Mexico to spend time with my family. We were on opposing sides of a fight before we even left Austin. We made up after we drove my sister's boyfriend, Francis, to the airport and realized he annoyed us more than we annoyed each other. My sister was in the hospital from a car accident he had caused. Her face looked like it was beaten to a pulp, and all Francis talked about in the 30-minute car ride was himself. "The cops were so mean to me in the holding cell," he said. "I wasn't drunk. Anyone can drive high on weed after 2 beers and a few shots of tequila." Hating Francis reunited us, until we went to Holbox a few days later. This time we fought over a disagreement about a movie. On the ferry ride to the island, Kiki had an anxiety attack that I ignored while strangers tried to calm her down. At our Airbnb, Kiki finally said, "Can we talk?" I sat across from her on the bed and said, "What do you want to talk about?" "Why are you so angry?" "Because you acted like a child. It makes the people around us look at me like I'm a monster." "It's called anxiety." "Before that, it's like whatever I say or do affects you so much that you lose all self-control. First you didn't want to get out of the car, and then you turned your head down when we bought the ferry tickets. That part was your choice. Why didn't you talk to me before we got out of the car? Why is it all my fault? We talked for an hour before we got here. We clearly weren't going to reach an understanding. That doesn't mean we have to act like we hate each other." I stopped when I saw tears in her eyes. "I'm not saying this is all your fault. I understand that what I did on the ferry hurt you. I'm sorry I left you like that. But I think it's important that we both take ownership." "Take ownership of what? I can't control my anxiety." "That's not what I mean. I'm saying look at the whole picture. You wanted me to put my feelings aside to take care of yours, and the same thing happened on the ferry. Maybe you're right, and when your anxiety gets to a 10, I need to put my feelings aside to help you, but I think sometimes I need to honor my feelings too. I don't always feel like I get to do that. You're really sorry about what happened on the ferry? You looked so angry. I held Kiki's hand and said, when I get angry is kind of like when you get anxious. It feels overwhelming, like I can't see past it. My eyes well up. I wanted to hold you and tell you it was going to be all right, but I was scared. I felt like I needed the same thing you were asking for. Apologies were as close to understanding each other as we got. We left the room and went for a walk. We ate sushi and got drinks at a bar with loud music. We sat at a table on the sidewalk and pet the stray dogs that roamed the streets. I wish we could take one home with us, she said. I can't wait for you to meet Milo. Do any of these dogs look like him? The fat one lying on the ground reminds me of him. That's something Milo likes to do a lot. I'm excited to go to Charlottesville with you, I said. I've never done something like that. Like what? I'm usually the one showing people around. You're gonna love it. There's nothing like Virginia in the fall. Back at the Airbnb, we drank beers, listened to music, and talked about our exes. So you were a theater nerd, I said? That's how you met him? And also how it ended, she said. That doesn't sound good. I was in a play with this other kid I really liked, and we had a scene where we had to kiss, and your boyfriend was okay with that? In theater it happened all the time, but this time I actually liked who I was kissing. So we would stay a while after rehearsals and practice the kissing part. You cheated? Kiki seemed amused. She said, I did, but he never found out. What about you? You said your relationship was a mess. I also cheated. I mean, I never had sex with anyone, but I guess back then a kiss is considered cheating. And she did find out. How? A text. Nick? I know, I said. I told you. I used to be an asshole. I thought about Nat and whether or not I should bring up that cheating too. I decided not to. Then, Love Like a Sunset by Phoenix came on and took me back to all that was going on with my sister's accident and how I hadn't seen my dad much and how I worried that he might die soon. Kiki said, Why are you crying? It's nothing, I lied. Talk to me. What's going on? It's just that coming home's never easy for me. What's making you think of that right now? My dad. I'm worried about him. I'm sorry. Do you think you can let it go? I looked up at Kiki's eyes and noticed for the first time that she was buzzed. I want us to have a fun time. I couldn't believe my ears. A message I'd received my whole life came back to me. Nobody cares about my feelings. My vulnerability was shot down by the person I wanted to comfort me. What? Kiki asked. I didn't respond. Please talk to me. Why do we have to fight about everything? I put the headphone that had fallen out of her ear into mine. You're being very selfish right now. I won't stand for it, she said. She got up and stormed out of the room. I pushed play on the iPod and buried my face in a pillow. Over the music, I heard the sound of glass shattering and Kiki saying, Ouch! She came back in and said, Why are you acting like this? I don't want to talk to you, I said. Kiki screamed and punched pillows. I never imagined I would fear a woman, but that night I feared her. Her eyes were bloodshot, her pupils the size of nickels. Whatever I was sad about moments ago was replaced by the debilitating realization that I had to break up with this person. Things had reached their boiling point. When Kiki's energy dropped, she sat next to me in bed and said, I'll sleep in the kitchen if you want me to. I won't bother you anymore. Is that what you want? If you can respect my boundaries, I don't mind us sharing the bed. What boundaries? Just stick to your side of the bed. Okay, she said. I turned up the volume on my iPod and let the music drown out my feelings as I fell asleep. Chapter 13. The Discovery of Menchats. After Eloisa and I stopped talking, I dreaded going to school every day. I had stopped using crutches, and no one paid special attention to me anymore. I hated every minute of it. I hated rainy days even more. The gloomy gray clouds made everything feel dismal. I became numb to things that I used to love doing. I stopped making my friends laugh because I thought that if I made someone laugh, it would mean they would think I was okay, and in order for people to love me, I felt I had to be not okay. In bed every night, I stayed up for hours playing Snake, hoping Eloisa would text me. I dove deeper into online poker because that was one of the few things that still excited me. And somewhere in the abyss I had crawled into, I found Menchats, a website that allowed me to chat with strangers from around the world. The kicker was that they were all men, and I had to be 18 years or older to enter the website, meaning I had to click yes when it asked if I was 18 or older. My memory of the first time that I logged in doesn't exist. I don't remember that or how I learned that a username was used to indicate what you were and who you were looking for. For example, if you were a hairy old man looking for a hairless young man, you would write Bear for Twink. My username was always an iteration of the same thing, Teen Slave for Old Perv. In other words, underage boy desperate for attention seeks older man with no moral compass. In case the username didn't make it clear, I had more characters in the bio to explain what I was looking for. This was my first marketing experience, that is, marketing myself to older men in a way they could find my underage needle in the haystack. My bio read something like, "Want to dominate me on cam? PM me." With my username and bio combined, it was never hard to find someone. Sometimes the men would leave as soon as I turned on my camera because they could see that I was clearly underage. Other times, they were excited by the fact that I was underage. Because I didn't have my own bedroom, I performed for these men in a small pocket of the apartment where my couch and TV were. Conditions were optimal when Todd spent the night at a friend's house and Dad was out of town. But even when they were home, all I had to do was stay up later than them. It was a trade-off. The comfort of knowing that no one was home to find me masturbating on camera at 2 a.m, or the adrenaline rush of doing a headstand against a wall so I could ejaculate onto my face like my master had asked me to do, knowing Dad and Todd were only a few feet away from me. Nights at home became what I most looked forward to. It was both where I was wanted and where I was good at the things I was doing. It was also a place where I didn't have to walk around shame-ridden like I did at school, worried that someone would smell the secrets on me. My window of opportunity to ask for help was long gone. The adults in my life weren't going to help me. If anything, I knew if I told them what I was doing that they would get angry at me. From that point forward, I figured out life on my own. Dad provided me with money, food, and shelter. Todd was my source of fun, friendship, and sometimes answers, like what to expect going into 8th grade. Mom and Juliana, the women in our family, were just numbers on a phone to me. Every 6 or 7 months I would see them for a few days. The things I was responsible for were all of the things I had no fucking clue how to do. When hairs started to grow on my face, I used my dad's razor to shave them off dry and cut up my skin until I learned about shaving cream. When solid white chunks I would later learn were called smegma started to collect under my foreskin, I scraped them off with wet toilet paper and hoped it didn't mean that something was wrong with my penis. When girls broke my heart, I kept it a secret and ate junk food, watched movies, and spent more time on my computer, masturbating on camera or playing poker. Sometimes I went up to the rooftop and cried. Being different was now a fact of my life. If anyone at school was going through what I was, they were as good, if not better than me at hiding it. Everyone had at least one parent at school events. Nobody had dandruff in their hair or fucked up teeth like I did. And because Mom had been a teacher at this school, I was the only C student held to the Gomez standard. It wasn't until I turned 22 and went back to high school for the first time since graduation that someone told me they knew what I was going through was hard. Jorge, my PE teacher, and I sat down to have an adult conversation for the first time in 2 decades. "We were always worried about you from a young age," he said, "especially those of us that knew your family. It was tough watching you suffer like that." I guess I wasn't wrong about being different after all. Chapter 14. Doing my part. It's been 2 months since our trip to Cancun. We came close to breaking up then, and a couple of times since. I have become resentful of Kiki's anxiety and she a victim of my anger. I can't remember the last night we spent together without one of us getting upset. Kiki really enjoys smoking weed and doesn't think it's a problem how much she does. I enjoy it too, but for all the wrong reasons. Because of that, I know it's a problem. We used to enjoy sex, movies, and conversations sober. Now, if I'm not high, I can barely stand being in my own skin. I resent Kiki for smoking, and I blame her for how much I smoke. When she comes over, she always asks if she should bring her pipe and her weed. Part of me wants her to stop asking, but then I wouldn't get my fix. For all of that and more, I am now convinced that we're not meant to be together. Kiki doesn't want to change. I do. Kiki never lets me talk in social situations. Kiki has become a victim to her anxiety. Everything is Kiki's fault. So why even try anymore? That's the question I end up at, because if I'm doing my part and she's not, then I have permission to stop doing my part. I get a text from Samantha, an old coworker, asking if I want to go to a concert with her at Mohawk this weekend. I haven't seen her in months, and there's a part of me that knows Kiki will worry if I do go, and I want Kiki to worry because I just can't tell her that I feel neglected. I need to manipulate her and show her how I feel by making her feel the exact same way. When I tell Kiki my plan, all she asks for in return is that I text or call her after the show to let her know how it went. I'm angry that she's not upset, so I perceive this as her attempt to control me. She's not my goddamn parent. Why is she asking me to check in with her like I'm going to do something bad otherwise? It's not my fault that she's so insecure she can't go to bed without knowing I didn't cheat on her. Samantha buys 2 vodka Red Bulls and hands me one. We finish them as we near the stage. I buy the next round and then the show starts. I'm buzzed but not quite enough as I want to be, so I chug the second vodka Red Bull. I look around the crowd for attractive women and find a couple of them. I bob my head to the music and laugh when sweaty men try to hit on Samantha. She has an awkward shyness to her that makes her come across to strangers as an asshole. I gradually let myself get separated from Samantha. She is in her happy place, dancing drunk, and I'm on a mission. There's a cute girl with dark hair and red lipstick that smiled at me every time I look her way. If it's this easy for me to go to a bar and find someone that's attracted to me, why am I so worried about breaking up with Kiki? I like your shirt, the girl says into my ear. What's your name? I like your dancing, I say. I'm Nick. What's yours? Zoe. Find me after the show. Zoe walks back to her group of friends. I get close to Samantha, who is now bobbing her head and flicking hair sweat on everyone around her. It doesn't look like she saw me talking to Zoe. Now I just have to make sure she doesn't see me talking to her before we leave. Or maybe she's drunk enough that she won't remember. Or maybe I can end our friendship and never have to worry about her and Kiki seeing each other again. The music ends and the band all walk off stage. Samantha decides to stay because there's gonna be an encore, and I tell her I'll wait for her at the entrance. The crowd takes me with it, and with very little effort I find Zoe again. I get close to her and ask for her number. She takes my phone and types it in, says, "Text me." I tell her I will, kiss her, and walk away, noticing her blush and smile as I do. Then I text Kiki and tell her that the show has just ended. Chapter 15. Virginia in the Fall. The flight to Charlottesville mirrored the one to Cancun. Kiki and I fought until we couldn't stand to talk to each other. I started this one because I was nervous about the outcome of the trip. My old childhood narrative took over. If one thing goes wrong, Kiki is going to leave me. By the time we arrived at the Charlottesville airport and got in the car with Marfa and the family dog, Milo, Kiki and I could barely look at each other. Correction. Kiki wanted me to look at her and emotionally connect with her, but I was upset at her for not predicting my every need and being the mother I never had, so I pouted instead. Martha took us to Bodo's Bagels, Kiki's favorite, and then to Kiki's old high school for a short hike. When Martha asked me a question, I answered it, but when Kiki and I were alone, my walls came up. I was so worried we'd break up after this trip that I figured I might as well be the one to sabotage it. At least then I'm in control, and I don't have to be the one that gets rejected. It wasn't until I met her dad that I pulled it together. Mothers are quick to forgive their daughter's boyfriend, but a father already hates him for fucking his daughter. At least that's what I told myself as I shook Jonathan's hand and thanked him for inviting me to stay with them. Jonathan wasn't the insecure and possessive father that I projected onto him. Unlike Nat's parents, he allowed me to sleep in the same bed with Kiki, in the room next to his. Yet I felt ashamed and afraid to show Kiki any sign of affection when he was around. My needs didn't matter. What mattered was pleasing Kiki's family so I could manipulate their perception of me. Despite my being in full survival mode, Martha and Jonathan were so compassionate and understanding that they met my behaviors with kindness and love. One morning, Martha and I went grocery shopping together so that Kiki and Jonathan could have alone time. She followed me down the aisles as we searched for ingredients to the recipe I promised to cook for them: Thai spicy chicken over jasmine rice and broccoli. "Was it ever weird for you and Jonathan when you lived in Holland?" I asked. Him not being able to speak the language, I mean. Jonathan knew that everyone there had the best intentions. What do you mean? Whether or not he understood Dutch, he knew no one would say anything bad about him. When my family traveled to visit our American relatives, my mom always told us not to speak Spanish because no one else could understand it. "So?" Martha said, the same furrowed eyebrows as Kiki. "You shouldn't hide it either." It's weird because now I feel uncomfortable speaking Spanish to my brother around Kiki. Don't be ridiculous. Why would you speak any other language than the one you feel comfortable speaking to your brother in? Let others feel how they may. You really think so? My whole life I thought that was rude. I don't know your mother, but there is nothing rude about that. And look at what it's done to you. It's made you ashamed of your ability to speak another language. I found myself idealizing Kiki's family. They were the unit that I never had. They loved each other unconditionally. They connected on a deep, emotional level. The disconnection between Kiki and me faded the more that I got to know her family. If this was who I had to spend the rest of my life with, I was excited it was only getting started. We picked up her brother, Dan, from the University of Richmond, and he stayed with us for the weekend. He was an artist and a musician, and he reminded me of younger me. He wanted his family to understand him, but also be independent, and didn't always feel like he could do both. Dan read my first collection of short stories and said he enjoyed them. Small things like that showed me how much this family accepted me. The Cohen family made a big deal out of things that the people in my life found trivial. I felt more a part of this family than I did my own. We went out to dinners and had stimulating conversations. We played board games and laughed a lot. We were around each other even when we weren't interacting. We took Milo for long walks and laughed when he disobeyed Jonathan. On the night I cooked them dinner, Jonathan said 3 things I will never forget. "Wow, rice and broccoli never tasted this good before, and the chicken is just spicy enough. This has to go in our Cohen recipe book." I was all smiles that night. I met Kiki's childhood friends at a pub in Charlottesville's downtown square. It was loud and we were crammed tight, about 10 of us, most of them men. As I introduced myself to her friends, I couldn't help but imagine that each of them had fantasized about being in my position at some point in their life. How many times must they all have talked about her when she wasn't around? I felt betrayed every time she hugged one of them. How could she not see that they were trying to steal her away from me? Why is she making me feel this way? My insecurities, coupled with what I perceived as Kiki's betrayal, put me in opposition to everyone at the table. With that, I completely shut down. I did what I always do in that situation, and I put up walls. I pretended like I didn't want to be there. Like even if one of them stole her from me, I wouldn't care. I don't have feelings, so try to hurt them all you want. You will fail. If Kiki grabbed my hand or tried non-verbally to get some kind of communication out of me, I shrugged my shoulders and scoffed. Not only that, I was also caught in a thought loop that said, none of this was my fault. It was Kiki's. At the end of the night, Kiki made it clear to me that she was furious. Her disappointment was so unprecedented that I didn't take the stance my thought loop wanted me to. I knew that wouldn't help. So instead, I admitted I was wrong. Now all of my friends think you don't like them. I'm sorry. It's not because I don't like them. I'm just scared. Scared of what? That your friends won't like me and that you'll leave me. Scared that if I tell you how I feel, you'll reject me. What do you mean? I want to communicate and let my guard down, but everything in me says to do the opposite. That sounds like anxiety, honey. The word honey puts me at ease. She's not going to leave me? Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Maybe. That sounds just like my anxiety. Okay, sure, it's anxiety. I've never had a name for it, but yeah, I guess I have social anxiety. And it's really bad, and I'm ashamed to admit it because you're very social, and maybe you won't want to be with someone like me who isn't. That's not true. I'm glad you told me, because it explains a lot. But I'm still very upset. As you should be. Just know that I do care about getting to know your friends. And if there's any chance we can see them again somewhere less crowded, I would like a second chance. We walked back to the car, holding each other in the cold. Chapter 16. The first time. It's late January of my sophomore year in high school, and I've been with my girlfriend Valentina for over a year now. For her birthday, she decides to go clubbing in Playa del Carmen with her girlfriends. I get a text from her at around 1 in the morning, a text I have stayed up waiting for, and it paints an image in my mind I will fail to let go of for the rest of our relationship. All the girls found someone to make out with, and all the guys at this club are trying to make out with me. I'm literally covering my mouth to stop them. I've been searching for a reason to break up with her, and this is it. But if we break up, I will also suffer, and that doesn't seem fair to me. So I decide to punish her for tonight by feigning disinterest. Why should I be the only one that stays up past midnight anxiously awaiting a text from my partner? I arrive to school early on Monday and leave a birthday gift in her locker. I go straight to homeroom and wait there for the bell to ring. I avoid her most of the day, and when she asks if we're still going out after school to celebrate, I tell her that we're not. I'm not in a celebratory mood, I say. I'm not even sure that I want to be with you anymore. She begs me not to leave her, and though I hate that I am hurting her, I hate even more that she hurt me. I don't break up with her. I only lie to her that I need time to think about it, as if I haven't already made up my mind that I'm never going to leave her, because to leave her would mean to be alone. Deep down, I do want to leave her. We're not good for each other, and that's something both of us became aware of long ago. Yet it's become a habit of mine to listen to my fears rather than my feelings, and I fear leaving her more than I fear what I might become by staying with her. At this point, I have already cheated on her, but I use the night in question as permission to cheat more, or at least try to. I go out to nightclubs more than I want to, hoping to find a stranger from Colombia or Brazil to make out with. I also text more frequently with Chelsea, a blonde 12th grader who has expressed romantic interest in me, despite also being in a committed relationship. 2 months later, I find myself in Chelsea's living room, holding her in my arms and rubbing the top of her head with my fingers as we watch a rom-com on TV. After the movie, she walks me out to the hallway of her apartment and sucks on my neck and mouth before saying goodbye. Rumors spread of Chelsea and me and her German friend Louisa having made out in a hot tub. It is a blatant lie, but one that I wish was true. My girlfriend and I don't get in fights about it because she trusts me so much that she just takes my word for it. She believes I've been spending more time with Chelsea only because she's a friend. But when we travel to California to visit my mom and I find a text message from a male friend of hers, it's enough for me to freak out and yell at her about it. Why the fuck is he texting you, "I love you" in French? It's not what you think, she says. We're in French class together. He's just joking. Joke or not, I use it as an excuse to give her the silent treatment for the rest of the night. There is a hot blonde waiting for me back home, and I'm stuck in California in this shitty relationship I don't want to be a part of anymore, so I take it out on her. The day after Valentina flies home, Mom invites a friend over who brings her family with her. 3 kids, one of whom is my age, enter the house. Todd and I greet them and then go up to Todd's bedroom to play video games. After the guests leave, Mom tells us that we are the rudest kids. Todd looks confused. I see red. I can't believe you two didn't ask those kids to play with you. How do you think they felt coming to a stranger's house and being treated like that? Your friends are not our responsibility, I say. Well, it wasn't my responsibility to take you and your little girlfriend all around town, was it? But I did anyway. And this is what I get in return? Shame on you. And here I was thinking you actually wanted to get to know her. Fuck you, Mom. Mom leaves early for work the next morning. I set an alarm for 5 minutes after she leaves. Todd is asleep when I wake up. Cold invades my senses. Or maybe it's the nerves from what I'm about to do. My days of masturbating on camera for men I met on Menchats are behind me. Now, I have discovered something far worse. Craigslist. I slip into sweatpants and a sweatshirt and walk over to the park near our house. I stand on the sidewalk and watch as cars drive by. I don't know what car to look for, but the man driving the car knows what teenager to look for. A driver pulls up and rolls down the window. We don't exchange words, but rather a look that acknowledges who we are and what is about to happen. I open the passenger door and get in. I was thinking we could just go back to my place, the driver says. Adrenaline blinds me. He wants to kidnap and rape me. Get out, now. I'd rather not, I say. Okay, there's an empty lot a few minutes down the road. I'll drive us there. He turns the radio on. So, how old are you again? 18, I lie. We pull into the empty lot. He unbuckles his belt and pulls down his pants. Go for it, he says. Before I know it, I'm rubbing his cock up and down. His right arm comes around my shoulder and his hand lands on the top of my head. Have you ever given a blowjob? I nod my head no. He starts to push my head down as he says, do you want to put it in your mouth? I nod my head no again. Words have escaped me. He lets go of my head and says, just keep jerking it then. I'm getting close. He eventually comes onto his belly button and part of my hand. He doesn't clean up. He just pulls his pants up and his shirt down and drives us out of the lot and back to where he picked me up. I walk home, my arms and legs shivering as this thought keeps repeating in my head. Please don't be awake, Todd. Chapter 17. Web of Lies. Kiki's love for me grew exponentially the more of my friends that she met. It peaked when she met Donald, who came to visit one summer. Donald knew me in a way that few people do, though he still didn't know the real me. He'd known me since 4th grade, watched me go in and out of relationships, helped me cheat on one of my exes, and flew with me to Vegas to play in the World Series of Poker. Donald also admired my uncommon life trajectory because part of him wished that he had done the same. He was the social proof that validated me as everything Kiki had built me up to be. Loving, courageous, creative. He talked about me the way Kiki thought about me, both of them putting me on a pedestal. Kiki invited Donald and me to Liam's birthday party in Hyde Park. Donald had never been to an American party, and although he had a girlfriend, he didn't see the harm in flirting. So we decided to go. We picked up Kiki on the way there. When we arrived, we were greeted by 2 gay men standing on the porch, some of Liam's close friends. Once we settled in, I went to grab us 3 beers, and on my way to the refrigerator, I saw her. Someone that would steal my focus for the rest of the night. Someone I viewed as a threat to my relationship. Someone I needed to avoid at all costs. Zoe, the girl I had kissed at the concert. Our eyes met and locked for a brief spell. I walked back to my group and handed everyone their beers. When Kiki got pulled into another group, I told Donald about my dilemma. "We need to talk," I said. Outside the house, I continued, "I can't tell you the whole story because it's too long, but there's a girl at this party that I cheated on Kiki with, and Kiki doesn't know about her, and she doesn't know about Kiki, and I didn't know they ran in the same circles." "Is there any evidence?" Donald asked. Images of my Facebook messages to Zoe flashed in my mind. "Fuck," I said. I pulled out my phone and opened Facebook. I searched for my conversation with Zoe. I went to her profile and blocked her. "Not anymore," I said, "unless she took screenshots before I blocked her." Let's not make assumptions. You don't talk to her, look at her, or even so much as think about her tonight. We worry about the rest later. As soon as Donald finished his sentence, we spotted Zoe and Teddy together. "Okay," he said, "as long as Teddy's not a backstabbing pussy, you'll be fine." The last thing I wanted was for Kiki to find out and be hurt. She would never forgive me, and our relationship would end too soon over a foolish kiss. Did Teddy really want to be the bearer of bad news? I didn't know him well enough then, but I can say looking back that I'm surprised he didn't say anything, or that if he did, I never found out. Teddy and I would grow to resent each other, but at the time, we didn't yet. So maybe Teddy gave me a pass, or maybe he and Zoe talked about something else, and I was just paranoid. For weeks after the party, my paranoia grew of the invisible threat to my relationship. To cope, I began to write Kiki more poems than I already was, and exhibit fewer of my negative traits around her. I wanted to prove to her that I was still worth being in a relationship with. I'm not the lying narcissist you haven't realized I am, I promise. And here's where it gets worse. With time, I genuinely forgot about Zoe. 1 month later, I turned 23. Okay, she said. "It's okay if you don't like these. I don't want you to worry about reacting. I know you said you don't like that. There's also an order I want you to open them in." Kiki handed me 3 wrapped gifts. After I opened each one, she explained why she'd gotten it. The first was a red button with a pre-recorded audio message on it. Kiki had recorded one of Eminem's lines from the rap battles at the end of the movie 8 Mile. We had watched it in Cancun, and Kiki knew that I was an Eminem fanboy. The second was a kitchen knife. "You're always saying that your brother's knives aren't sharp enough," she explained. Tears welled up, ready to pour out of my eyes as I opened the final gift. A rain jacket. "So you won't get wet on your bike anymore." I was overcome with emotion. Kiki hadn't just bought me a cool toy or gadget. She had paid attention all this time to the things that I actually needed and knew that I didn't like owning things without a practical use. These gifts were about me, not about her. "Oh, honey," she said, "come here." She put my head on her shoulder and told me she loved me. "These are my favorite gifts ever," I said. "Thank you." Chapter 18. Tunnel Vision. From 7th grade to the end of high school, I was sure I wasn't going to college. I told everyone this any time the opportunity presented itself, like questionnaires at the end of standardized tests that assumed I was going. Where do you want to do your university studies? I'm not going to do my university studies. What do you want to major in when you go to university? I'm not going to do my university studies. Have you considered applying for student loans for your university studies? I'm not going to do my university studies. My girlfriend was definitely going to do her university studies, and so were my friends. Those who weren't were treated like black sheep. No one believed that I wasn't going to do my university studies, even my girlfriend, who finally convinced me to at least apply. Even if you don't end up going, she said, wouldn't you rather have the option to before it's too late? At the time, I saw backup plans as indicators of not believing in myself. But because I didn't know what I didn't know, like how to get a job or find an apartment in another country, I worried that if I didn't go to college, I would fail, and everyone would say they told me so. So I went. The California State University of Channel Islands became my new home. It was in the small town of Camarillo, just 40 minutes outside of LA. Mom's family lived 2 hours south, and Mom 5 hours north. It was a distance great enough that I still felt like I was on my own. The year started out as I imagined it would. Everything excited me. Going to class, walking by hot girls in the hallways, smiling at those same girls in the cafeteria, making new friends, raising my hand in class, having a car and using it to visit my grandparents or hotbox with friends or go hike in Malibu. I studied fiction from indie author Sean Carswell and screenwriting from Raymond Singer, one of the writers on Mulan. I made friends I keep in touch with to this day. I developed a weed habit and found that I enjoyed my days a lot more when I was high. As I sit and write about this time in my life, it's hard not to remember it only for the good things. People always ask me why I dropped out at the end of the year. It's not an easy answer. I enjoyed being in college. I enjoyed living on my own, but not really having the responsibilities that come with living on your own. But it wasn't all sunshine. That was the year that I started to give blowjobs to older men for money. The discovery of Craigslist's personals section in my teens was like a dog discovering he can tear into his bag of food. One of the downsides to living on my own somewhere no one knew me was that I could tear into that bag anytime I wanted. My first time meeting up with a man in Camarillo was not for money. It was out of curiosity. Though I didn't recall enjoying the hand job I gave the first Craigslist man, the one I met with in the Bay Area, I thought maybe a blowjob would be different. I parked a few blocks away from his house so that he wouldn't see my license plate. I even gave him a fake name. This had to be completely anonymous. My body started to shake as I got out of the car and messaged him that I was almost there. I liked that feeling. It erased everything else in the world. It was an intoxicating kind of tunnel vision. What I imagine you feel when your life is in danger. I didn't accept this at the time, but my life kind of was in danger. Meeting anyone on Craigslist is a threat to your life, whether that's for a used sofa or a job interview. I rang his doorbell. He invited me in. I saw a room with a bed to my immediate left and started for it, but he stopped me and said, "Actually, I'm watching a game in the living room." I followed him to the living room and sat next to him on the couch. The football game was muted. He didn't look at me after we sat down. He looked at the TV until I froze and didn't do anything. "Go ahead," he said. "You can start." I took his clothes off and went down on him. A few minutes in, he unmuted the game. When he finished, I saw a look on his face that I'm all too familiar with. It's the look that forms on all young men's faces after they've ejaculated with someone they don't love or care about in the slightest. I knew that meant I should leave, so when he offered me a glass of water, I declined. He walked me out and said, "Reach out anytime you want it again." When I got to my car, the shakes were worse, and coupled with a feeling in my gut I didn't like. I sat with the engine running, struck by how anonymous we all are. There's an immense world full of people, and there is no telling what someone is up to at any given moment of any given day. Some of us commute, come home to our friends or family, and let our days play out in modest fashion. But some of us decide that because we don't have class on a Wednesday morning, we should experiment with our sexuality. I never saw that man's face again. I don't even remember it anymore. I need to forget that this ever happened, I thought. But sure enough, a few days or weeks or sometimes even months later, I always went back to Craigslist. There were many girls that I wanted to talk to and potentially go on dates with, but I didn't want to risk being rejected. On Craigslist, rejection was like a unicorn. You didn't spot it often, and even when you did, it was fleeting. I didn't need the money, but I convinced myself to charge anyway. If I'm going to feel empty and shameful, I should at least get paid for it. Forget about investigating the emptiness and the shame. Those were foreign concepts to me. I met with dozens of men. Some I saw regularly, others only once or twice. One of my regulars, an old man whose wife was out of the house 8 hours a day, paid me $40 each time, and our sessions lasted upwards of 2 hours. Old men, I learned, are not easy to get off. Most other men I met with paid me at least double what he did, but I liked seeing him because we had privacy. A lot of the others lived with roommates and had me sneak into their rooms. There was the man in Thousand Oaks who couldn't get hard and went down on me instead. There was the weird Asperger's guy I first jerked off in a public restroom and later in a motel. If he hadn't already murdered anyone then, I'm sure that he has now. He just had that look in his eyes. There was the middle-aged man in Oxnard who got angry when I didn't answer his emails on time. He told me I was a stupid whore that didn't know about respect. It wasn't role play. It was just how he felt. But I continued to see him and allowed him to disregard my boundaries. I even found men when I visited family. I remember lying to my mom about going to the movies one night so I could blow a half-Asian, half-black dude in Berkeley for $150. There are plenty of others that I have since forgotten about. Most of what I did was because I wanted to feel like I mattered to someone. I wanted to feel connection. And I wanted to hurt myself because I hated myself. My double life would eventually catch up to me. But at the time, I believed I could outrun it. By the time I was a teenager, I'd grown used to the idea that others had more of a say over what happened to me and my body than I did. When I had my first medical checkup, that year in the Bay Area, I went into the doctor's office alone while my mom and brother waited outside. Mom had said to me that, "You do what the doctors ask you to." The doctor, a grown man, performed all of the routine tests, putting his equipment in my ears, nose, and chest, and asking me to take deep breaths. Then he set the equipment down and said, "All right, kid, drop 'em." I froze until he spoke again. "Your pants and underwear. Drop 'em." I pulled my pants and underwear down to my ankles as the doctor approached me. "Let's take a look," he said. He cupped my balls in his hand and gently squeezed them. "I'm feeling for tumors." After a minute of this, he told me I could get dressed. "Everything looks good down there," he smiled. When I got in the car, Mom asked how it went. "He said I'm healthy. It was funny when he checked me for tumors the way he asked me to undress. He said, 'All right, kid, drop 'em.' I giggled from the back seat, hoping that Mom and Todd would laugh so I could let go of what was so uncomfortable moments ago. But no one said a word. I felt ashamed at what had happened in the doctor's office. I felt more ashamed that I shared it with my family. The message I got when they didn't laugh was that good boys don't talk about uncomfortable situations, and boys that do are not loved. By the end of the year, I was convinced I wasn't worthy of love, at least not from my family. I was loved when I didn't exist, because if I didn't exist, I wasn't another problem to deal with. My friend Roland threw a party for his birthday and invited me and our crew to spend the night at his house. Some of us slept in his bedroom and some in the living room. I was a part of the latter, and I slept on the floor next to the couch where Oliver, another friend of ours, slept. I woke up in the middle of the night with my hand on his penis and his hand over mine. The muscles in my arm tensed for a second, and then relaxed when I decided to pretend that I was asleep and dissociate. This way nobody would know what happened, not even me. When Oliver sensed that I was awake, he let go of my hand. As long as I don't move, I thought, Oliver will think that I'm asleep. After a few minutes, he grabbed my hand again and continued to touch himself with it. I don't know if Oliver had an orgasm. I have no recollection of how it ended. Only that the next morning, I no longer felt safe around him. Not because of what he'd done, but because of who he might tell. How I felt didn't matter. How others would feel if they found out was what mattered. So I pretended that I didn't care, and that this problem didn't exist. Soon, Oliver started to resent me for pretending. He tried to intimidate me around our friends. "You liked it," he finally said one day. "I know you liked it." "Liked what?" "Admit it, or I'll tell everyone you're a faggot." "Leave me alone," I said, and pushed him. "You're the faggot." Oliver and I never spoke again after that. He even stopped sitting with us at lunch. I didn't tell anyone about this for a full decade. The real story came out only after Nat and I broke up for what I thought would be the last time. We were separated for 2 months, and it was in those 2 months that I went to my first Sex Addicts Anonymous meeting. Before I was allowed to go to an official meeting, I met with one of the veterans of the group for a one-on-one. The man I met with was a tall black man named Angel. We sat across from each other on a sofa in one of the smaller rooms. Angel talked about the 12 steps and how the meetings worked. Then he read an excerpt from Out of the Shadows by Patrick J. Carnes. After the reading, Angel told me his story. Then he asked if I wanted to share mine. "You don't have to," he said, "but if you feel like it, what made you decide to come to this meeting?" I experienced some dissociation as I started telling Angel the truth. And ever since then, I've had this feeling that's stronger than me. This pull to find strangers and give them blowjobs or let them finger me. It comes and goes. Before my ex and I broke up, I had stopped for months. Now I can't stop at all. And it's always unprotected, which intellectually I know isn't safe, but I don't actually feel that emotionally. I feel like I can get away with it. Like, maybe it happens to some people, but it won't happen to me. Angel nodded his head like he understood exactly what I was talking about. He very likely did understand, but part of me didn't want to accept it because he'd had anal sex and I hadn't. That was how I set myself apart from all the other sex addicts in the world and in the movies. I'm not selling my ass for cash. I'm just giving blowjobs. Like there's some fucking hierarchy to the world of prostitution, and I'm on the top rung. So anyway, I said, I don't know how to stop, and I think it's an addiction. That's why I came. I grew overwhelmed with feelings of inferiority. I hated the feeling, and so my mind figured out a way to escape it. At the furthest point of dissociation, I began to wonder if deep down Angel wanted me to blow him or let him fuck me in the ass. Maybe some of the men that I've met up with come to this meeting, and maybe because of that, they can spot a whore from a mile away. I went to several meetings after that. Though I still felt misunderstood, I knew I'd found a group of people that were at least willing to be honest. After a while, I stopped using Craigslist. I continued to masturbate on camera for this old guy that paid well, but I told myself that was different. Convinced that I no longer had a problem, I grew tired of the meetings and stopped going. I thought to myself, I knew there was nothing wrong with me. Chapter 19, The Inevitable. I don't know how it got to this point, only that I remember the early weeks, and I remember them fondly. Every day feels uncertain and unstable. One day Kiki and I are having the silliest of times, laughing and teasing each other, and the next we're barely speaking. I have lost all trust in her and allowed my insecurities to dominate our interactions. She was getting drinks with a friend and was supposed to text me when she was on her way to mine, but the text came 30 minutes late. When she arrived, I was ready for all-out war. "I'm sorry I lost track of time," she said. "Trent really needed someone to talk to. I really needed you to be here on time so that I wouldn't have to feel this way. So what do you want to do now?" "What? What do you mean?" "Well, I had made dinner thinking you would be here by 6, and it's almost 7 now." "Can you acknowledge what I said first?" "Acknowledged. Now what?" Kiki scoffed and stood up. "I'm not doing this tonight," she said, and started to gather her things. "Oh, now you're going to leave? Wonderful." "What do you want?" she asked. "I told you I'm sorry. I don't understand why you're so angry." "Oh, you don't understand," I suddenly raised my voice. "How would you feel if I was at a bar with a girlfriend of mine and I didn't text you until an hour after I said I would?" "It was 30 minutes. "Whatever." And I said I was sorry. "But did you mean it?" Kiki fell to her knees and started to cry. "I was really excited to see you tonight. Why do we always have to fight? Why couldn't we just reheat my dinner and talk about our days?" "So it's my fault," I said. "You know what? Get the fuck out of my apartment." Her tears turned into rage. She stood up again with all of her stuff and started for the door. "You were never really sorry," I said to her as she opened the door and left. Months earlier, we were having a fight just like that one, but over text. You could tell who was angrier by how fast we replied. I don't remember what we were fighting about, only that she asked if she could come over so we could talk about it in person. Texting is a terrible way for me to communicate, she had once told me. I refused. It was late, and I was going to bed, and whatever it was that we were fighting about was a non-issue to me, or so I told myself. I'm sure I said something like, "Your anxiety is not my problem. We can talk tomorrow." Her ex-boyfriend used to get mad at her for being anxious, but I was convinced her ex and I were different. He resented her for it, and I resented her for not taking better care of herself. If you stop drinking coffee, I would say, you won't be so anxious. If you quit that job you hate, you'll sleep better. I might as well have said, if you changed into who I want you to be, then maybe I'll love you. After some back and forth, I told her I was going to bed and that I'd text her in the morning. I put my phone away and turned the lights off. 15 minutes later, I heard a knock at the front door. No fucking way. I pressed my face against the peephole and saw Kiki standing there, shivering, eyes red, face swollen. This girl just needs to be held and to be told that she's perfect the way she is. "Go home," was the first thing I said when I opened the door. I immediately felt like an asshole, but I couldn't stop myself. My ego wanted to win the fight. She pushed through her anxiety and said, "Will you please just listen? Please? I'm sorry." "Go home," I said. "This is crazy. My brother's asleep. I told you not to come." Please. I can't go to sleep like this. Will you just hug me and tell me you're not going to leave me?" What I heard was, "Will you disregard how you're feeling so that I don't have to feel this way?" I'm ashamed of many things that I said and did to her, but this one might top them all. I said, "This is bordering on psycho. Go home." Then I closed the door in her face and went back to bed. Mom was in town for Thanksgiving. I was halfway through writing my new book, and the line between reality and fiction had started to blur. I didn't want to have human interactions. I wanted to lock myself in my bedroom and finish the book. A year from then, I would read in Zach McDermott's memoir, Gorilla and the Bird, that there is a term for what I was feeling. Hypergraphia is a behavioral condition characterized by the intense desire to write or draw. Or maybe it's a label self-absorbed artists use to justify their behavior. Months later, author Tucker Max would reply to a comment of mine on social media to tell me that, yes, writing can be a form of avoidance. But at the time I thought it was just a part of the creative process. I had to milk my creativity while it lasted. I didn't know I was going to write another book a few weeks after Mom left. I invited Kiki to dinner with Mom and Todd. We ate at a bar on the east side. After dinner, Kiki and I drove my mom to her Airbnb where I would spend the night. They said goodbye, and then Kiki and I talked a while before she left. Our relationship was crumbling. She was withholding her emotions out of fear that I would react angrily to them, which, up to that point, I had been doing. I felt helpless not knowing what was going on with her. "I'm fine," she said. She kissed me. "Be with your mom. Don't worry about me right now." This was unprecedented in our relationship. Kiki never withheld how she felt. This had to mean she was going to break up with me. The kettle had boiled far too long. Reluctantly, I said goodnight and went up to Mom's room. I felt my chest tighten as I walked in. The last thing I wanted was for Mom to worry about me, as if the opposite is ever the case. We talked about her Airbnb and the bars around it. One bar was too loud, Mom complained. At the first lull in conversation, my body gave up and my emotion decided it would no longer be suppressed. I broke into a heavy cry and gasped for air. "Oh no," Mom said. "Why are you crying?" I sobbed. "I'm just really sad." I explained to Mom what was going on with Kiki. I told her it was hard for me not to know how she felt. I cried harder. Mom patted my back and said, "Try to wail if you can. It'll feel better. Right now you're not allowing it to come out fully, and that's not good for you." A sick feeling replaced my sadness. I wiped my tears away. I felt no consolation from the woman sitting next to me, whom I had called Mom for so many years. Is this what I felt when I cried as a baby? The more I tried, the harder it was to escape how hollow and empty our relationship was. Mom was more afraid than me that I was crying. I'm not allowing it to come out fully? My emotional expression isn't good enough? Where had I heard that before? If you changed into who I want you to be, then maybe I'll love you. I looked into Mom's eyes and saw not a mother to a child, but a child with no mother. If I ever become like your grandmother, she told me when I was 10, I want you to let me know because that's the last thing I want. It's brave of you to have called me when you were crying, she told me after an emotional breakdown I had at 21. I would never call my parents if I was crying. The sadness returned, but for different reasons now. I felt more alone than before. I suppressed it momentarily and said, "I'm gonna go to bed now." "Okay, kiddo." I waited to hear for when Mom left the living room and went to sleep. Then I allowed myself to feel again. And what I felt was that life would never be the same for me. If Kiki and Mom can't love me, what on earth makes me think I can love myself? Maybe love's not the answer I've been looking for. Maybe I need to accept that I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. Then I can finally start living the way I know how to, the way I always have. When you feel alone, you act like it. It doesn't matter that you have a girlfriend or friends or a family that care about you. When you feel alone, you blame them for how you feel. If they really cared, why would you feel alone? The moment I had those thoughts at work on a Friday night, I knew how the night would end. I closed up shop around 6 and walked across the street to a bar called The Liberty. The irony of the name was not lost on me as I sat at the bar and ordered a vodka tonic and scribbled depressing poems into my notebook. At the time, I was working on a short story about a guy just like me that came to a bar just like this one to cheat on his girlfriend. I looked around the bar and knew I wouldn't find an attractive woman here. I texted my good friend Wes and asked where he was. He said he would be here soon. On the top left corner of the wall behind the bar was a TV playing the Sci-Fi channel, as if one needed another reason to feel like scum here. I heard the crack of someone's pool break. More people filed in. Wes arrived and gave me a hug. I ordered him a vodka tonic and myself another one. "Add 2 shots of whiskey to that," Wes said. Then to me, "I just got off a hell gig. I need this." "I need this too, my man." "Did you hear back from your friend about the co-op?" "Yep," Wes said. "Doesn't start until 10, so we have time." "To get fucked up?" I asked. "I didn't drive, so if that's the plan, count me in." "Oh shit, boy." The bartender set our drinks down. Wes and I cheersed and threw back the shots and chased them with the vodka tonics. I closed out and said to Wes, "Let's get the fuck out of this place." We left the Liberty and walked a block down the street to the Grackle. We drank a beer there and then walked another block down to Whistler's. Wes ordered us more whiskey shots, and by the time we drank those, I was hammered. On the way to the co-op, I fucked with our driver and told him in my best Russian accent that I was voting for Trump in 2020. It made Wes uncomfortable and me laugh harder than I had in months. The driver dropped us off at a convenience store where we bought a 6-pack of beers. Then we walked the rest of the way to the co-op. Nobody at the party knew who I was. They also didn't know that no one knew who I was, or that I wasn't supposed to be there. I was drunk past the point of recognition. I approached a group of boys that were smoking and asked if they would trade me a joint for a beer. They agreed, and after I handed it to them, I realized they were smoking freshly rolled tobacco, not marijuana. "Gross," I said, and handed Wes the cigarette. I moved to another group and introduced myself as Helen's friend. "Who's that?" one girl asked. "You don't know Helen?" I said. "She's around here somewhere. Who do you guys know here?" "Each other," the girl said. Are you a student? Fourth year bio major, I said. Wes laughed. Just kidding. We're friends with the band. I left that group and moved on to the next, unfazed and giggling. I asked the new group what time the band was playing. They mumbled something and asked me for a beer. I have 4 left and 3 of those are my dinner, so you'll have to share this one. A tall blonde appeared next to me and laughed. I'm Hannah, she said. Nick, I said, your friends here don't seem to like me. That's because they don't understand you. ¿Qué? Mis amigos no te entienden, she whispered in my ear. They don't speak Spanish. How the hell do you understand me? She winked at me and said, I'm cultured, honey. From there I abandoned Wes and stuck with Hannah the rest of the night. We danced and made out and had the college fun I missed out on. She asked if I had condoms. I told her I didn't. She invited me over anyway. Under one condition, she said. You can't spend the night. I laughed because what kind of self-loathing man wants to spend the night with someone he has sex with? Then I ordered a ride and the 2 of us got in together. We continued to make out in the back of the driver's car. I have roommates, Hannah said. We have to be quiet, but only when we go through the front door. We giggled as we walked into her apartment and then her bedroom. There was art on the walls and on the floor and on shelves and on everything. It was good art, too. I wanted to ask her about it, but she undressed me and herself quicker than I could say the words, Did you paint these? I entered her bare and pumped a couple of times as she scratched my back. Then my drinks caught up with me and forced me to stop. I ran to her bathroom and vomited into her toilet for 20 minutes. I'm sorry, I said. Don't apologize. I took 3 Valiums before going to that party, so I'm feeling pretty ill, too. She gave me her number and asked me to leave. Will you text me? She asked. I will, I lied. I wasn't sure what the hell tomorrow would bring, or if I'd even live to see it. Outside of her apartment, it was freezing all of a sudden, a cold the adrenaline had helped to mask. My ride arrived and quickly realized I was that passenger. I can't drive you like this, he said. Please, I said, my phone's almost dead. I'm not far. I promise I won't throw up. Reluctantly, he drove me home, and of course, I did throw up. He pulled over and let me hurl my insides on the side of the road. I felt shame. I felt many other things knowing I had cheated on Kiki, but my physical pain was too great to take on anything else at that moment. Once home, I undressed, vomited a few more times, and then collapsed in my bed. If you've ever cheated on someone you love, and maybe even if you haven't, then you know what it's like to reach the top of an empty mountain and lose yourself along the way. To feel so disconnected from yourself that you start to question if you'll ever get better, if you'll ever deserve to heal from the pain that caused you to put this hurt into the world in the first place. To wake up from a night of debauchery to a text message from your loving girlfriend that says, Good morning, honey. What time do you want me to come over tonight? Excited for your show and to spend time with your family. Kiki knew only as much as I had told her. Wes and I went out drinking last night. Period. And it was entirely up to me whether or not I filled in the gaps. Telling her the truth crossed my mind that day, but I had too many excuses to actually do it. My family was in town and they were all going to come watch me perform in the annual holiday improv show at the Hideout Theater. What felt empowering last night, this morning turned into one of the most debilitating feelings that I've made the mistake of carrying thrice. Before I cheated, I felt a loss of control, a loss of self, a loss of everything that once made me whole. I thought, if only there was someone out there that could make me feel those things again, not knowing that I was that person, because how could a broken toy fix itself? When I was dancing with Hannah last night, her hips thrusting into mine, I felt wanted. While Kiki was in her feelings somewhere, not letting me into her world, Hannah was present and willing to let me into hers. As I entered Hannah's body with my own, I remembered a past experience of infidelity that protected me and made me feel safe. That wasn't the case this time. This time, I was so overcome with unfelt grief that my body hurled it out as vomit. Feel your pain, motherfucker. Feel your goddamned pain. I asked myself what changed. Why didn't this woman fill my emptiness like all the ones before her? The answer was so obvious that it smacked me in the face, but the smacking left me in a haze, and I used that moment of weakness to pity myself and play the victim. After all, that's what got me here in the first place. I accepted defeat upon life. If my coping mechanisms have stopped working, that means I'm doomed to live a miserable life because coping is all I know. Beware, for if you rush the inevitable will happen. I convinced myself not to tell Kiki. Not yet, at least. She would never forgive me. She might never forgive herself. What if she hurts herself? What if my actions wreak so much havoc on her life that she can't bear to exist anymore? I thought of myself this highly, despite the new low I'd hit. And I did it because this way I never had to tell her. Instead, I could protect her. The truth is, I was only protecting myself. Deep down, a part of me knew this. I'd played out this same scenario twice before, and it always fell apart. Think of how relieved you felt when you told the truth the last time. Oh wait, I didn't tell the truth the last time. Not the full truth. Well then, the time before that. Don't you remember? It didn't matter what the rational voice in my head said because I could counter it 100 different ways. My defenses were as strong as my offense, if not stronger. So I reached out to friends because I didn't want to take responsibility for my actions. My American friend empathized with my situation and told me about a time when he cheated on his girlfriend. And they made it work, didn't they? I ignored the part about them no longer being together and how ugly their relationship ended. My Mexican friend didn't care about my feelings. He loved me enough to tell me the truth as he saw it. I hated him for it because I knew he was right. He told me that the only way out is through. She deserves to know the truth and to make that decision for herself. The decision I didn't want her to make. The decision that pointed to the end of the world. There had to be another way out. Love is not black and white. It's a gray line that's poorly drawn and often stepped on. A relationship is not two people coming together to form one whole. It's two people showing each other half of themselves to form something that resembles what I was modeled on TV growing up. Though I'd tried to hide from the truth before, I knew that in the past I had only failed because I was younger and dumber. I was stronger now, and sure that this time would be different. Chapter 20. End of an Era. At 17, I lost my virginity and my moral compass. I had cheated on Valentina with a stranger from Craigslist, then with Chelsea, and finally with Clarissa, one of Valentina's best friends. We were on a school field trip in the state of Chiapas where we spent a couple of nights in the town of San Cristobal de las Casas. It was there that I broke up with Valentina as we walked home from the bars late one night. I wanted to have sex with Clarissa, but I wanted to try being with her, not as an act of cheating this time. High school logic, I know. Valentina dropped to her knees and begged me to take it back as tears streamed down her face. I was angry because this display was going to make me late to my booty call. I told her to stand up. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. "If you leave me, I'm staying here alone on this dark street." "I'm not your fucking caretaker," I said. "Either walk with me or don't." Yeah, I actually said that. When we returned to the hotel, we went our separate ways. Inside my room was my friend Donald, who knew what I was up to. I sat next to him and cried into his shoulder. The anger I displayed moments earlier had been to cover up the fear and sadness I felt inside. What if no one ever loves me again? What if things don't work out with Clarissa? I posed questions like these because my perspective was that without her in my life, I would never be complete. Donald comforted me and then left the room. Clarissa knocked on the door. I let her in and told her what happened. Then we kissed and started to undress each other. She got on top of me and dry humped me, and all of a sudden my sadness had vanished. I was in a mild state of shock when I realized that I was about to have sex with Clarissa. She was the girl that everyone wanted to be with. She was the girl that ended friendships. And somehow, she wanted to be with me? I reached for a condom, and just as I felt it in my hands, there was a knock at the door. "Clarissa? Nico?" I heard my history teacher outside. "Open this door." Clarissa stood fast, grabbed her clothes, and said, "What do I do? Should I hide?" Still shirtless, I got up, nodded, and pointed to the bathroom. Then I opened the door. "What's up, Teach?" I said. "Clarissa's not here." "Clarissa," she said, "if you're in here, come out." "She's not here," I said. Clarissa walked out and said, We were just talking." The teacher escorted Clarissa back to her room. I closed the door and once again found sadness. The next morning, we all got in the bus for the day-long drive back to school. I sat alone. People I thought were my friends paid me visits and threatened to tell Valentina what had happened between me and Clarissa if I didn't. I received similar threats via text. I wasn't sure how everyone had found out, but after an hour or two of this, I was left alone. And when that happened, it all hit me. All of the emotions I had avoided came at once. My self-hatred, self-pity, shame, guilt, sadness, anger, hatred, longing, and regret. I covered my face with my hoodie and curled up in the fetal position to purge as everyone around me celebrated. A week later, Valentina still didn't know the truth. The threats continued, but I called all of them on their bluffs. I surrendered the idea that we would ever get back together, and that gave me the strength to hold my ground. I would tell her in due time, if I felt like it. We still texted back and forth a lot and played that game that all toxic couples play to keep the fires of hope alive. There's no reason we can't be friends, is there? After a couple more weeks, I decided it had to stop. Valentina was spending a lot of time with Clarissa, and she only wanted to be my friend because she didn't know what I had done. I told her on the night of her first art show. She had invited me and said she would be disappointed if I didn't go. About the 6th time that she asked, I said I couldn't because there was something I needed to tell her. I made the genius mistake of thinking she would be able to sit with that kind of uncertainty until the next time we saw each other. Moreover, I knew that she wouldn't, that she'd pressure me into having that conversation via text, which felt safer. And that's exactly what happened. Ha 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 ha, of course you did. And of course you did it with that fucking slut. I received the same screenshot from both Valentina and Clarissa. Valentina's came with this text. Now all the girls will know what a good friend your little whore is. Clarissa sent hers by itself. The screenshot was of a group chat with both of them and 5 other girls in it. Valentina had shared my confession with them. I should have known you were a scumbag. You're such a sad little man that you didn't even have the balls to tell me when you broke up with me? Ha ha! I blocked her number. She messaged me on Facebook. You think blocking me is going to make this go away? Everyone's going to know what kind of friends you two really are. I blocked her on Facebook. She emailed me. Go ahead, asshole. Way to take ownership for your mistakes. I hope you two are happy with each other. Let's see how long before one of you cheats on the other. During the last 3 months of high school, I went in late and left early. I spent time with Clarissa and hoped I could jump straight back into another relationship. But her parents knew what we had done and after a while forbade her from seeing me. We sneaked around a while longer until one night when her dad found me hiding in his living room bathroom. Everyone found out. Valentina's parents told everyone else's parents, parents told their kids, kids told their friends, friends told more friends, teachers heard kids gossiping about it in the hallways during recess. Valentina wouldn't even look at me anymore. She developed an eating disorder and lost a ton of weight. Her skin grew pale. She stopped hanging out with girls and started hanging out with all of my old guy friends who were no longer my friends. She left school early at least once a week. She lost the joie de vivre that made her, her. I lost close friends and bad friends, and the shred of confidence I never had. In my head, every day I went to school was a war between me and everyone else. I made my walls impenetrable. I stopped going outside during recess and instead played chess in the library with 7th graders who thought I was cool for what I had done. I shrank day by day and prepared myself to never see or speak to anyone at my school ever again. After school, I would jump into my pool and blow out all the air from my lungs so I could sink to the bottom and sit there until I couldn't hold my breath any longer. I wanted to disappear, and that was the closest I could get to that without killing myself. Chapter 21. The Worst Person in the World. Weeks after our encounter, Hannah and I followed each other on Instagram. When I realized my Instagram had evidence of the committed relationship I was in with Kiki, I blocked her. Around this time, 2 of Kiki's coworkers confessed to her that they had been involved in cheating. One woman said a married coworker had kissed her. Another woman had just been broken up with and found out that her boyfriend had cheated on her from the start of their relationship. Kiki tried to unpack these situations with me. She felt guilty about staying silent and wanted my opinion. If I didn't already feel like a scumbag, talking to Kiki about her cheating friends, having cheated myself, cemented the feeling. I don't know, I said, paranoid that any opinion would reveal my infidelity. I think your first coworker should stop seeing that guy. But I don't think she needs to be the one to tell the wife. So you think he should get away with it? What came out of my mouth next was the most honest thing I would say to Kiki for months. He's not getting away with anything. Deep down, he'll always know the truth. That his partner doesn't have all the information. That he's a liar and a fraud. What struck me about our chats was that Kiki empathized with both sides. The cheating angered her, but having cheated on her high school boyfriend, she could at least put herself in their shoes. And, as if these 2 cases weren't enough of an indicator of what needed to happen in my relationship, my friend Donald had recently been cheated on and broken up with on his birthday. How could she do this to me? He said. Several times during their 3-year relationship, Donald had also cheated on her. For whatever reason, I decided to remind him of this. That's different, he said, because I didn't tell her about it. So, on one hand, there was Donald, who wished he hadn't found out, and on the other was Kiki telling me that it was morally wrong not to tell your partner. If you're not going to tell the truth, you have to at least break up with them, she said. Every day I went back and forth on the matter. If I told the truth, Kiki would break up with me and hate me for the rest of her life. If I broke up with her, she'd never know the truth and be able to look at the relationship for what it actually was. And if I did neither, I'd be sacrificing genuine connection and love, following in my father's footsteps rather than learning from them. Truth was on the tip of my tongue, yet I'd never felt farther from it. Only 2 people knew, and one of them lived in Mexico. When Wes hung out with Kiki and me, I felt like the worst person in the world. The more time went on, the worse it would eventually be when I told the truth. So you knew when I told you about my coworkers? I imagined Kiki asking. You knew every time I went to your improv shows? And Wes knew this whole time? By late December, I could no longer live a lie. In what is perhaps the most selfish decision I've ever made, I started writing a new book, one that would lead me to be less present with Kiki. It's hard to even say that I decided to do this, because when I worked on that book was one of the only times in my life that I've felt possessed. I could sit here and lecture you on what I should have done. I could tell you that if you ever cheat on someone, the best thing to do is to tell them the truth as soon as possible. I could rationalize why I started writing the book when I did, and tell you that if I hadn't, I may never have told Kiki the truth. That somehow the book got me there. I genuinely believed that for a while. But life is messy. I don't believe in right or wrong. Things happen and I either learn from them or I don't. That's about as black and white as it gets. I wrote the book when I did because I was afraid and I needed to hide. Writing is the one place where I've felt safe my entire life. I wrote it because I wanted to buy time and short-circuit the feelings of shame and guilt that I was carrying. I wrote it to avoid. The book I wrote was my memoir, We All Wear Masks. At the time, it was the most honest look in the mirror I'd ever taken. It was the first time I gave myself permission to tell the truth and own my flaws. Writing that memoir was my way of getting to the truth. At a time when I hadn't ruled out the possibility of killing myself, when telling Kiki the truth trailed behind lying and breaking up with her, I needed a reminder of who I really was. Yes, I believe it was selfish to start another project when I was neglecting the one that most needed my attention, my relationship. And yes, I also believe that if I want to heal, sometimes I have to be selfish. The two are not mutually exclusive. Through the end of December and most of January, I wrote. I finished the first draft in under a month. That's how desperate I was for answers. When Kiki asked what I was working on, I told her I couldn't talk about it until I was finished. I didn't talk about it with anyone. I simultaneously felt isolated and comforted by the writing process. Comforted by the fact that, yes, maybe I'm still hiding from others, but at least I'm not hiding from myself anymore. When I finished the first draft, I told Kiki what it was about. We had just gotten in another fight and were parked in an empty lot a few blocks from her place. The distance between us had grown so much that I had started to believe I was going to lose her. I was so afraid she was going to leave me that I thought one small truth could extend the life of our relationship. What I was writing about was my last relationship and how fucked up that time in my life was, I said. I never told you this, but I used to get paid to be with older men. Kiki furrowed her brows. I had to remind myself that this didn't always mean she was upset. She closed her eyes, as if to imagine me being with men, and then opened them. It started when I was a kid. I did it on my computer. As I grew up, it got worse. I also cheated on my ex, so the book's about how my life was spiraling out of control at the time. Kiki said, "This whole time you've been writing about your ex-girlfriend?" Well, yeah, there was a lot from that relationship that I never allowed myself to feel. But it's not like I enjoyed writing about her. It just reminded me how bad that relationship was for us. Wait, she said. I thought you only cheated on your high school girlfriend. When did I say that? On the boat ride to Holbox, when I told you that I cheated. You mentioned your high school girlfriend, but not the one after that. You're right. I did do that, but it wasn't my intention to hide it from you. I guess So you've cheated in both of your past relationships? I sensed that Kiki wanted to hit me or yell at me. I cheated in both of my past relationships, yes. I'm surprised that's what you're upset about. Why? I don't know, I said. All of a sudden, my genius idea felt like a mistake. I should have never told her any of this. I thought you'd be turned off knowing that I've been with men. I'm not done processing that. We sat quietly for a couple of minutes. Why did you do that? She asked. The thing with the men? I said. Yes. And what exactly did you do? Do you like men? I don't. I gave them blowjobs, and I did it because I was in pain and I wanted to hurt myself. What does that mean? Kiki, I've felt alone for most of my life. Giving blowjobs and doing the things I did on camera, it made me feel like someone cared. Like someone thought I was worth their time. I just can't believe you didn't tell me this earlier. I know, I said. I'm sorry. What am I supposed to do with all of this? What do you mean, what are you supposed to do? Is this why you've been so distant lately? Is this why we fight all the time? Well, let's not make me responsible for every problem we've had, but yeah, in a way, it is why I've been distant. Carrying that amount of shame is crushing. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? I'm telling you now, I said. I was overcome with grief. My plan had failed. Telling Kiki didn't make me feel any better. She wasn't the person that was going to fix it for me. I felt more ashamed than I did before I told her. Like, not only was it wrong what I did, but also to have told her. I began to cry. Why are you crying right now? Kiki asked. Because it sucks that I hate myself so much. Writing this book wasn't fun. You're one of the only people I've told about it, and the only reason I didn't tell you sooner was because I've never felt safe telling people the truth. Did you tell your ex? Yeah. Why does that matter right now? Are you even listening to me? What did she say? What? What did your ex say when you told her? She didn't care. Kiki looked at me like I was a foreign object. When was the last time you did it? With a man? Yes. A couple of weeks before we met. Have you been with anyone else since we met? Now's your chance, motherfucker. No. No one. You haven't cheated on me? No one. I haven't cheated on you. And you finished the book? Yes. I'm done with the past. I'm all yours. If you still want me. What does that mean? Just that, I understand if this makes you feel less attracted to me. I don't know how I feel, Nick. This is a lot to learn about you. It changes so much for me. And yet it doesn't change a thing. I don't like you any less than I did before. It's just a lot. The rest of the night fades in my memory. Kiki would go on to tell some of her family and friends about this. I would feel betrayed by it, but accept that it was the cost of me lying for so long and continuing to keep an even deeper lie. Knowing that her people knew about this only made it harder for me to be around them. For a couple of weeks, I also fooled myself into thinking that things would be better now that I had been honest with her. After that, the guilt and disconnect returned. I had still cheated on Kiki, and she still didn't know. Our relationship hinged on a lie, and it would never thrive again unless I told her the truth. But when we drove away from the lot that night and got high at her house and fell asleep together, I felt that as long as I wasn't alone, I would be okay, regardless of how I or anyone else felt about it. Chapter 22. Begin Again. After I finished writing We All Wear Masks, I felt an inner freedom I never had before. I told Todd I could die tomorrow and I would have lived a fulfilled life. With that freedom came an inescapable truth that was now on paper. I have a lot of emotional work to do. What before was my fear of what would happen if I told Kiki the truth, now was a story from my past about what would happen if I didn't. I didn't want to end up high on mushrooms at the bottom of the Grand Canyon again, contemplating my existence and everyone that forms a part of it. This merry-go-round of shame and lies was one I had to get off of. Kiki hated talking about the memoir. When she had processed most of the information of my quasi-confession, she wasn't that bothered about my encounters with men. The lies and the part about my ex were what bothered her, and those were most of what the memoir was about. I took her discomfort with it personally. Now that I had uncovered this deep, dark secret of mine and felt ready to share it with the world, I sensed that she wanted me to bury it. You know there's no rush for you to publish this, she would say. Had our relationship been stronger at the time, and had I not cheated on her, part of me believes she would have reacted differently. I make this distinction now, but back then I did not. Back then I used her discomfort as yet another reason to sabotage our relationship. That is, until I went back to therapy. I liked my therapist from the very first session. He was Hispanic and in his 50s. He dressed sharply and spoke softly. He asked a lot of questions, starting with why I was here. I cheated on my girlfriend and haven't told her yet. One of three things needs to happen. I tell her the truth and try to make it work. I suck it up and live a lie. Or I break up and don't tell her the truth. But I don't want to be sitting here 3 months from now talking about the same thing. I had now externalized my goal. If for no other reason than that, I felt reassured that this time therapy would be more than just a place for me to confess and feel better about myself. Kiki picked me up from therapy and always asked how it went. At first I would tell her, but 9 times out of 10 it led to a fight, so I stopped. When I didn't share, it also upset her. So many of our conversations became arguments about the same things: her anxiety, my memoir, and our codependency, that I don't remember many lighthearted moments after my return to therapy. Even trivial conversations became arguments, like when she saw me vote for Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life, on Goodreads' Books of the Year list. "Why are you voting for that guy?" she asked. "Because I read his book and I really liked it." "I think it's terrible that you support him." "Why is it terrible?" "Because he talks about very dangerous ideas on a massive platform and it's irresponsible." "Okay, well, that's your opinion. I feel differently about it. Can we just leave it at that?" "It's not just my opinion, it's the truth." "Except that you haven't read his book, and I have." 5 minutes later, Kiki was in tears, and I was seeing red. That conversation became a template for our discussions about popular culture, politics, and personal growth. If ever I had an opinion that wasn't in alignment with hers, we had a problem. I drew focus away from the relationship and turned it over to the memoir. Now that it was on paper, the idea of publishing it felt real, despite what Kiki or anyone else would think. But before I could do that, I had to come to terms with the fact that everyone would know my truth, that I cheated on 2 girlfriends, now 3, and that I had sex with older men for money. Chapter 23. Emotionally Unavailable. After I broke up with Valentina, people treated me differently. My worth seemed to drop now that there wasn't a girl by my side, but I was on a mission to show everyone that I didn't care. For a couple of weeks I didn't tell Dad. I feared he wouldn't care and thought if I didn't tell him that he couldn't reject me. In class I sat with the few friends that still accepted me, and the kids no one wanted to sit with. Once I lost my seat at the popular table, I realized all that separated me from the kids I used to call losers was external validation that could disappear at any moment. It really hit me when even they didn't want to sit with me. I didn't just pay the price for cheating, I was forced to reconcile with the fact that I had hurt many others along the way. When I finally told Dad, it was because I thought my walls were strong enough to withstand his invalidation. He was sitting at his computer when I said, "Valentina and I broke up." "This is like the 5th time, isn't it?" he said. "You'll get back together. Don't worry about it." "I don't think so," I said. "I think this time it's forever." Dad took off his reading glasses and turned away from the computer to face me. He sighed like I was a problem he didn't want to deal with. "Son, every man has to go through at least 7 women before he settles down. Maybe it's time you stopped focusing on girls so much." I chuckled to protect Dad's feelings and walked out of the kitchen, back to my room, where I cried into my pillow for the next 2 hours. Midnight rolled around and no one had come to see how I was doing. I figured no one cared. I watched a baseball movie on TV about Jackie Robinson and remained wide awake when it ended. So I watched another one, and another one after that, and before I knew it, my alarm for school went off. I got out of bed and showered. I got in my car and started for school. On the way there, I became drowsy and fell asleep, then jerked awake when I felt the car drift toward the median. I stopped at a convenience store and chugged a Red Bull. I did the same thing on the way home. No recollection whatsoever of the last 8 hours at school. A couple days later, Carmen and I took Dad out to a steakhouse to celebrate his birthday. I hadn't bought him a present, so I decided to do what he had taught me and gift him money. When the check was brought to our table, Dad put on his reading glasses and opened it. "Here," I said, and handed him all of my money. It paid for half of the bill. "Happy birthday." Dad stared at the cash in my hand and cackled, said, "You took that from my wallet, didn't you?" I felt myself about to burst into tears, but got angry instead. "No," I said, "but now I wish I had." We didn't talk the whole way home. I locked myself in my room and cried myself to sleep. The next day he acted like nothing happened. Though I was heartbroken at his reaction, I did the same. It was his birthday, and in my family, you didn't express any emotion that could possibly upset the birthday boy, unless, of course, that boy was me. Mom and Dad could act however they wanted when it was their turn to celebrate, and more often than not, that looked like them dismissing the celebration and later getting angry because they really did want to be celebrated, but didn't know how to express that. Like the time Mom picked Todd and me up from school. I was 9 or 10 and Todd was a teenager. I don't remember where Juliana was. Perhaps this was the year she was shipped off to boarding school in Santa Catalina because my parents were too busy and emotionally unavailable to take responsibility for her. Mom was wearing big dark glasses to hide her eyes. She stopped at a gas station and got out of the car. When she returned, she sat quietly for a moment and then started to cry. Todd asked what was wrong. "Nothing," Mom said, her voice louder than usual. "I'm okay." "Mom," Todd said, "what is it?" There was a long silence before Mom said, "Do you guys not know that today's Mother's Day?" Todd apologized, so I did too, even though I didn't understand what I had done wrong. I didn't have a strong concept of time or think of my parents as needing anything from me. When we got home, Mom locked herself in her bedroom for the rest of the day. There was no consoling her because this wasn't about us forgetting Mother's Day. This went way deeper than that, and we had no way of knowing how deep. Chapter 24. I Love You in Turmoil. When I cheat on someone I love, I do it because I'm a coward. When I made the decision not to tell Kiki that I had cheated, it was also because I was a coward. As a coward, I believed that time would create distance between me and my actions. But all it really did was create distance between me and everyone around me. After 2 months of lies, every day became a battle. If I had a good day with Kiki, I felt guilty. If I had a bad day with her, I felt guiltier. If Kiki had a bad day and came to me for support, I felt guiltiest. I could see the target. I was just afraid to take my shot. The danger was greatest with the finish line in sight, because that's when I started to feel the impact that crossing the finish line might have. When I was flooded with excuses as to why I'd done enough and why I didn't need to finish what I'd started. On month 3, I began listening to David Goggins' audiobook, Can't Hurt Me, and it made things worse. The book's description ends with a sentence he repeats throughout the book. A path that anyone can follow to push past pain, demolish fear, and reach their full potential. That anyone can follow. Those 4 words haunted me as I listened to the book on my commute to and from work. 20 minutes of a man who followed the road less traveled and defied the odds, telling me I was full of shit for not doing the same. It didn't matter what else I did with my life. Unless I told Kiki the truth, this would always outweigh the good I brought to her life. And the truth was what I feared most, especially considering how long I'd gone without telling it. Goggins was right. If I had told the truth from the start, this could have been a very different story. Instead, I dug myself a deeper hole every day. At work, my coworkers noticed my descent into depression. When they asked me what was wrong, I was vague and said, "I know what needs to happen, I just haven't made it happen yet." They hugged me and told me I could always reach out to them if I needed to. One girl, whom I told about the memoir, even said that I was being too hard on myself. She said, "You're in your 20s. Everyone makes mistakes." Her words made me feel better for a couple of days, but I always came back to the lie, the information she was missing when she decided to give me the benefit of the doubt. If only she knew this mistake of mine, surely she would hate me as much as I hate myself. In early February, I distracted myself with poetry. Kiki's birthday landed on Valentine's Day, and this year I wanted to go all out. I compiled all of the poems I had already given her and wrote 20 new ones. Then I printed them in a book I titled I Love You in Turmoil. It was hard to write those poems, knowing it was all bullshit unless she knew the truth. So I got high when I wrote them, and on her birthday when I went over to give them to her. When I walked in her room, she was video chatting with her parents. "Nick just got here," she said. Then to me, "Do you want to say hi, babe?" I sat next to her in bed and waved hello to Martha and Jonathan, feeling like a total fraud. "You guys don't know that I'm going to break your daughter's heart soon, but hi, how are you?" "Yeah, it's still cold here in Austin." After the call, I gave Kiki the book. She flipped through the pages and started crying. "Most of these you've already read," I said, "but there are a few new ones. Can I read them right now?" "It's your birthday, honey. We can do whatever you want." She read through it like a teenager does her first gossip magazine. Each time she found a new poem, she asked me to read it out loud. When she finished, she said she loved it and kissed me. She quickly pulled away and apologized. "What's wrong?" I asked. "I forgot to wipe my lipstick off. I don't want it to get on your face." "So what if it does?" "I love you," she said, and blushed. "Is it weird if I keep the post-it versions too?" I laughed and said, "Who cares if it is?" "I like the name. It reminds me of when you first told me you loved me. Do you remember?" "That's why I called it that," I said. How could I forget Marfa? Toward the end of the month, I told Kiki the truth. Teddy was out of town, so I decided to do it at her place. On the sunny bike ride over, I saw joggers out and about, squirrels carrying nuts, dogs wagging their tails. The world didn't stop for anyone but Kiki that day. Chapter 25. A Solution to My Loneliness. From the moment that I first got naked in front of my computer, I've struggled to make sense of why I did it. Why did I do it for strangers on the internet? Why did it develop into real-world encounters? Why is it so difficult for me to listen to reason when it tells me that this isn't the solution anymore? Moreover, why is the voice of reason barely perceptible? Some explanations make more sense than others, but some don't make any sense at all. And anyway, what's an explanation if not another word for justification? Or is that the conditioning in me to believe that everything I say or do is wrong because I'm wrong? For most of my pre-adult life, I was alone, and more importantly, I felt alone. I had friends, girls I liked that liked me back, an older brother I hung out with often, and people that cared about me, but I didn't have parents to guide me through the harshness of the world. My mother has struggled to regulate her emotions and went through heavy bouts of anxiety and dissociation. She described some of these bouts the way I describe my sexual encounters with men. Yes, I was physically there with you, but a lot of times I was so lost in my thoughts that I wasn't able to really be there. My father was a workaholic whose father was a workaholic. He was raised in a household with an absent dad and a tough mom. There was never a soft space for him to land, so he made work his soft space. When Todd and I moved in with Dad, we were an inconvenience to him. While I wrote this book, I had the opportunity to talk to my stepmom, Carmen, about that time in my life. She moved in with us the year after we moved back, when I started 8th grade. At first it was hard to understand your father. He's never been one to talk about his childhood. When I ask questions, he says he has no memories of it. When I tell him about my early childhood, he says I'm lying because nobody can remember that far back in their life. What specifically was hard for you that year? I asked. So many things, Carmen said. When he picked you up from school, I would ask him, what did the kids say? And he always said, nothing. They didn't say anything. They're fine. Dad sat with us as Carmen recounted this. He added, You two were in your own world. You had your friends. You were fine. I shook my head. He stood up and left the table. One time I took you to buy new cleats for a soccer game, Carmen said, and I asked if I could go to your game. Do you remember what you said to me? What did I say? You would actually go? I let out a heavy sigh and asked Carmen if she remembered any other stories like that. There's the time we drove you to the doctor. It was you, me, and your dad. We parked outside and your dad said, "Okay, Nico, make sure you do everything the doctor says and double check that he gives you all the information you need." I looked at your father and said, "Wait, he's going in there by himself?" Your father said, "Of course he is. I need to buy cement for tomorrow. I can't let this time go to waste." So I went with you. I wasn't going to let a 13-year-old boy go to the doctor alone. Without Carmen there at that age, I may have fared a lot worse. Even with her there, I never felt safe or at ease. I searched for a solution to my loneliness, but never found one that lasted. Girls helped, but when those relationships ended, I felt lonelier, like the world was ending. The most effective and problematic solution I found was to please old perverts. I say solution because at that time, it really was a solution. I didn't have to be alone when I had dozens of men requesting to see me each night. Had I not discovered this, or any of my other solutions, I would have been faced with painful emotions and long periods of time left alone to be ravaged by those emotions. I would have been faced with an unsolvable problem. Chapter 26. The Conversation. Last December, I got blackout drunk and had sex with another girl, I say. Tried to. I was too drunk and started vomiting. Every one of my fears manifests on Kiki's face. She looks like she's just seen a ghost, or through me, to the unfaithful liar who claims he loves her. I feel terrible, and at the same time relieved, because no matter what happens now, I no longer have to keep up this lie. "What?" Kiki says, the shock melting her already droopy eyes. "Why?" "Because I'm a coward," I say. "It happened the night before my Christmas show. You were trying out what you read from the codependency book, and I thought you were going to break up with me, so I did what I always do and self-sabotaged. I'm so sorry." "Why didn't you tell me?" My thoughts spin as tears start spilling from my eyes. I wish I could take my actions back and erase the pain from Kiki's giant heart. I wish I didn't have to say any of this to her. I start. "How could I tell you that I broke your trust and lied to you for 3 months? Nobody's ever loved me like you do. I didn't tell you because I was afraid to hurt you and afraid that you would hate me." Kiki's back hunches over as she cries with her body hanging limp. I've seen her cry before, but never like this. I reach for tissues on her nightstand and hand them to her. There's no anger I can hide behind now. I can't escape the reality that my actions have, for the 3rd time in my life, wreaked havoc on someone else's life. Someone that showed me unconditional love now has to suffer before my very eyes. It's the only way I'll ever learn this lesson. Finally, she says, "Was it just the one time?" "Yes," I say. "I never saw her again." "Was it because of something I did?" "No, honey, no," I say. "This isn't your fault." "Can you tell me why again?" "Which part?" "Why you did it," she says, her words beginning to slur. "What about all the poems you wrote me? Do you not love me anymore?" "Oh, Kiki, don't say that. Of course I love you." "You knew about this for 3 months?" I close my eyes and sigh. I open them and say, "And I'm so sorry. I felt guilty every one of those days. I don't feel like I deserve to be with you." "But why?" she insists. "I love you so much, Nick. Why wouldn't you deserve that?" I burst into tears again. Because look at what I've done. All you did was love me, and all I did was hurt you. No one's ever cared about me the way you do. Kiki hands me one of her unused tissues. I wipe my face with it. You don't hate me? I ask. I'm sad, she says, but I don't hate you. I thought you would be angrier. I'm not angry. It makes sense. It recontextualizes a lot. She looks into my eyes and says, so wait, does this mean we're breaking up? I want to say no. The thought of saying yes or I don't know is a dark, unexplored abyss in my mind. What happens if I don't know the answer? Will I lose her to uncertainty? What does it mean if I'm not sure? What does it mean if I don't want to be with her? I love you, I say. I know that much. I'm not sure what's best for us. Maybe that's unfair, but I don't want to lie anymore. How do you feel? Do you even want to be with me after this? I don't know. It hurts a lot, but it doesn't change the fact that I love you. How can someone this compassionate exist? Maybe we need time to think about it, she says. I feel scared, but the time has come to surrender. Maybe we do, I say. Is that what you want? Yeah, she nods her head. This is a lot to process. I know. I'm sorry, Kiki, I really am. Do you want me to leave? Will you hold me before you do? Of course, I say, and wrap my arms around her. She puts her head face down on my shoulder and cries. We stay like that for some time. Chapter 27. At my worst. In the weeks after our conversation, Kiki and I barely talk. When we do, I feel uneasy and unwanted, like I don't deserve her. The few text interactions we have are short. Kiki asks how I'm doing. I tell her I'm all right because I don't want her to think I'm well. In the weeks after our conversation, Kiki and I barely talk. When we do, I feel uneasy and unwanted, like I don't deserve her. The few text interactions we have are short. Kiki asks how I'm doing. I tell her I'm all right because I don't want her to think I'm well, but I also don't want to put the weight of how I feel on her. These interactions are awkward and frustrating. Donald tells me I'm making a mistake. He says I need to show up at her doorstep with a grand gesture. You need to tell her it's not over yet, he says. Don't let her make the decision. I ignore his advice because Donald's only been in miserably dysfunctional relationships. Aside from him, I don't spend much time talking to anyone about this. If someone asks, I tell the truth, which is that we're not sure what we want. I don't feel the pull I usually do to discuss potential outcomes with people that aren't involved. There's an overwhelming sense that no matter what happens, I've done my part. I told the truth. I spend time alone. I write Kiki poems because with the lies out of the way, I'm able to access my love for her again. I'm no longer burdened by the disingenuous nature of our relationship. I weigh the pros and cons of being with her versus not. I try not to romanticize our relationship, to see it for what it is. I'm not sure that I succeed on that front. In weighing the good and the bad, I reminisce on my life as a single man, most of which took place during college and my first year in Austin. For 3 years on either side of that, I was in committed relationships, every one of which came with a nagging voice in my head that urged me to be single again. This was a gut feeling I ignored and that, by ignoring, haunted me from the time that I was 16. There has to be more to being single than being afraid. The year in college showed me my path, and the first year in Austin allowed me to start walking it. Without the clarity of mind that I've only been able to achieve when I'm single, I may never have discovered my path. I was 19 and the only person I knew in Austin was Todd. I drove down from Richmond, California in the 2001 Ford Explorer that Mom got me for college. Everything I owned that I thought mattered was in that car with me. I spent the first 3 nights with a woman I met on a website called Couchsurfing. She took me to my first barbecue restaurant and introduced me to a friend of hers who helped me find an apartment. Austin welcomed me with open arms. A month later, I sold my car because I was starting to run out of money and hadn't found a job yet. I bought a bicycle and rode it around town to fill out applications. The first place that hired me was a banquets company. I worked a couple of weddings out in Dripping Springs and quit after I spilled the tray of empty wine glasses on the floor during the best man's wedding speech. My next job was at a food truck on West 6th Street, where all the rich people do cocaine and watch football. One night on my way home from that job, I was hit by a car, and I woke up in the hospital with no memory of the accident. I suffered a concussion and stayed with Todd while I recovered. A girl I was seeing brought cookies and wished me a speedy recovery. I didn't work for 2 weeks, and when I returned, I was fired by the owner's wife, who told me as she was firing me that she never fucking liked me to begin with. Unemployed once again, I decided to take some time to myself. I wasted most of it getting high and watching videos. I went on a few first dates, and then I met Mary. I met her at Torchy's Tacos, and from there we drove to her apartment. When we got in her car, I discovered what an ignition interlock device was and why she had one on her steering wheel. Mary was 4 years older than me. I was too insecure to kiss her or show her any sign of affection. I messaged her after our 3rd date, but she never responded. I fell into a week-long depression. I thought I was worthless and that I would never find love again. Then I remembered I could get paid to give men blowjobs and decided to try that again. I found many who wanted relief, and I gave it to them for $40, $50, sometimes $60 or even $100. I worried about the risks of contracting some kind of disease, but ultimately decided that to worry about that would mean I'd have to stop, so I quit worrying. One man invited me into his garage where he had a dirty mattress on the floor. He was angry that I wouldn't let him fuck me in the ass, so after a while of blowing him, he asked me to leave. Another man, frustrated for the same reason, settled for finger fucking me. Every time was different, yet the same. I always felt ashamed when I returned home. My problems were all still there waiting for me, only now they were compounded by my self-hatred. It was a vicious cycle of highs and lows followed by lower highs and lower lows each time. Things got on track again when I got a job. Then one night they derailed when I found my roommate dead from a heroin overdose, bloated and purple on his bedroom floor. My warm Austin welcome was no more. I had begun to realize where I could end up if I didn't get my act together. It became harder to ignore the effects of loneliness and depression once I saw them turn my roommate into a corpse. Then I entered into a serious relationship with Nat and forgot about my troubles. "Are you sure that's what you want?" Todd asks. "I've never been surer of anything in my life," I say, unsure of how true what I just said was. Kiki invites me over to talk 2 weeks after the confession. We sit on her bed, tiptoeing around our words because we haven't seen each other in so long. She asks how I'm doing. "I'm nervous," I say. "How are you?" "I'm also nervous. It's really good to see you, though." "It's good to see you too," I say. "The last 2 weeks have been so hard and at the same time so good for me," Kiki says. Hearing that feels like a punch to the gut. Was I the cause of her unhappiness this whole time? "I've missed you a lot," she says, "but I'm glad that we took that time to think about things. I really needed it. I journaled a lot, and I feel like I processed so much." "Good," I say. "I'm happy to hear that. And I missed you too. Every single day." "Were you able to think about what we talked about?" "About us being together?" I ask. She nods her head. "I was. Were you?" "I was," she says, and frowns. "You know I love you so much, right?" "I know," I say, and prepare for the dreaded sentence that's bounced in my head for 2 weeks. "And I don't hate you for what you did. I really do understand why you did it and that it didn't have anything to do with me. I thought about that a lot. Kiki catches me dissociating and stops to ask if I'm okay. I am, I lie. Go on. I talked to a lot of my friends and family about it. I asked if she talked to Teddy about it. I did. I fucking knew it. That fucking guy has had it out for me from day one. Where's your head at? Kiki asks. I want to know how you're feeling. This is it, I think. I can duck my head and call it quits, or I can go out and play the final quarter. I think it would be a mistake if we didn't try to make things work. She nods her head and says, I don't know, Nick. 2 weeks ago you weren't sure. I'm sure now, I say. But if you believe it's best for you that we break up, I want that too. See, I think that's what love is actually about. In a way, going through this only made me realize how much I truly love you. Whether or not I'm a part of it, loving you means I want the best for you. Kiki starts to cry. I put her hands in mine and continued. This is me at my worst. This is it. You've seen it all. And the fact that you can still love me despite that shows me what a fool I would be to let you go so easily. This goes beyond some fun little fling. I've never felt this way about anyone before. I thought the fact that I cheated meant that maybe we weren't right for each other, but we hurt the ones we love. It's a natural part of life. I do love you, she says, and I'll love you no matter what. As will I, but please, Kiki, don't give up on me. This is worth fighting for. You know that. Her head falls on my chest as her crying intensifies. I hold her like it's the last time I ever will. I don't know, she says. I thought I did, but now I'm not so sure. Because you're right, Nick. I've never felt this way about anyone either. I kiss the top of her head and tighten my hold on her. I feel like it all makes sense now. Kiki's the one for me. If we try, if we really fucking try, there's no reason this can't work. I want Kiki to be the mother of my children. She lifts her head up and finds my lips. We kiss for the first time in 2 weeks, and it feels like pure bliss. I feel a jolt in my heart, like everything will be okay now. Like all of my troubles are gone because there's love in my life again.